Yes.
Yeah, all of them are. Yeah. I need it. I need it. One hour. Yeah, no, actually, you know what I'm playing. It's one day. When is the application due? You're gonna miss next week too? You got it. Are you coming to the scrimmage? I can stay. Damn it, man. Yeah. That's true. They got I will move to my eye. They don't know. Yeah. We're gonna change the word. That's wicked. Is there a meeting there? Only needing 2 minutes. Maybe even find it, but if you don't have people say, but. Not yet. I think they're waiting to make sure they have everything submitted. But, yeah, that's a good idea. And then, add that to the menu. We can also see if we need to request. Which are terribly interesting. Because that was just. I call this meeting to order at 4 p.m. Here. He's here. He's coming back in the.
Oh, excuse. Meeting.
Here.
Excuse. Are you here? Ryan.
Here.
Darga. Here. Ryan.
Here.
Warren. Here. Here. Gavin.
Here.
Waddy. Here. Joshua.
Here.
James.
Here.
Ben.
Here.
Victor.
Here.
Fatima. Fatima.
Here.
Gavin.
Here.
Walk.
Here.
Francisco.
Running the room.
Doctor. Here. Leah. Here.
Here. Can I get a motion? Well, are there any corrections for the minutes of January 15th, 2025?
I move to approve the minutes from January 15, 2025.
Does anybody second? A second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, say nay. Okay. Are there any actually, for public comments, I will start with public comments. One thing I want to add, for Senate agenda item requests, please send them to the Microsoft form that's on the homepage for DASG. It just makes it much easier for me to manage what people want where. If you send me a message or, tell me, I will just kind of refer you to that form just because I'm human, I might forget. It becomes much easier to manage that way. Thank you. Any other public comments? Yeah.
I received a faculty association statement of support for undocumented student and international student employees from the faculty association director. So I want to share with you guys. So basically the forms about the faculty is supporting for the undocumented student, and they are kind of asking us to help with them to kind of work on resolution in the future. And the form say that the faculty association is committed to supporting diversity, equity, inclusion efforts, particularly as they involve the student and employee. The looming threat posed to undocumented and international students and employees by the election inauguration of Donald J. Trump is a cause for concern that our college and district leaders must do everything within their power to prevent the removal of any protected status this individual process and their deportation from our shores. We recognize that the governor and the state legislatures have been working on a series of legal mandates, which will potentially provide some protection. And but we feel that the district itself must also make a firm commitment to provide a safe for our people. And the summary of it is in the future, they will work on like advocating for training for the employees. And they want our students, studies to voice in and help with them to advocate at district level or like for justice. And I don't know if Mashuko is here and she can follow up with like more information on what to do. And I think she is also working on have resolution. And if any of us want to work on that, we can contact Mashuko or me. I will test to team with each the director of faculty association.
Any other public comments? Okay. Are there any advisor announcements?
Yes, one thing, I sent a reminder email, but if you have not submitted your goals for the current quarter, or this is for the student leader scholarships. This applies for mentors, DSG, ICC, and mentors. You can do so right away. I think the original deadline was last Friday. I sent a reminder to turn it in by today. Still haven't done it. Turn it in right away. That will count against your scholarship amount if you have not submitted one. And just a reminder, if you're in more than one, but basically, if you're in DSG and mentors or ICC and mentors, you will need to submit a separate goal for DSG or ICC and a separate goal.
Are there any other advisor announcements? On Zoom? Okay. Are there, I was just asking, are there any student trustee announcements?
So Alexander Guatua has been sworn in as the representative of trustee area 2 until re-election in November 2026. And the board also adopted a resolution in full support of undocumented students and affirming the privacy of student records. And we will revise it in the future to make the language stronger. So if any of you guys have any recommendations or advice, then please let me know and I'll bring it to the board. That's all.
Are there any external shared governance committee reports?
RAP met yesterday, and we reached consensus on putting the 4 following instructional positions into the first bucket of recommendations. The positions are business, chemistry, comparative ethnic studies, and track and field coach. We're still going to decide the rest of the instructional positions and then going to start on the non-instructional ones.
Are there any other external shared governance committee reports?
DAC met last Wednesday. They took a look at the equity plan reimagined, and they're developing a new plan to be in accordance with the state. We also reported back the equity plan spreadsheet goals, such as increasing equity seats among shared governance. They also discussed the equity retreat most likely occurring on February 7th. Also, the Equity Champion Awards Committee is looking for people to join the committee in selecting students for the Equity Champion Awards. And then we also discussed draft decisions that we're hoping to get appointed.
Are there any other external shared governance committee reports?
ASFC met last week, Thursday, on the 16th. So you just go through all the stuff that they went through. So they appointed new budget analysts, which were Ryan and Ivy. There's a new outreach officer that they implemented, and then they obviously talked about the new student trustee, Alexander, which is serving until 2026. They requested funds for Jewish Heritage Month, which was $5,500, estimated cost to be around $50 to $50. The Jewish Heritage Month will be part of Club Day. Club Day funding will be used for that. Other events in planning: Black History Month, Lunar New Year, Winter Ball. New budget request form for event-related funding is available. They set up job descriptions for officer positions for future applicants. Discussion on student body fee reduction from $15 to $12. Their final decision is pending, so it was just discussion held on that. Admin board meets weekly on Wednesdays. They held their first meeting that week. And then for VP activity, they had club day today actually from 12 to 2, and then talking about Jewish Heritage Month through the New Year event planning, new committee forming for specifically for Black History Month. And then health event plan to support students post inauguration day. The janitor team is expected to be fully staffed by next month. The pool redesigned to Olympic size with $8 million now allocated for locker rooms. More EV chargers planned for the campus, care packages for injured and hospitalized students, new website for international students, listing on campus jobs. Club reactivation deadline is by the 5th week, so 20 to 30 clubs are now active. Senate meeting was held last Wednesday. Senate and ASFC are different, by the way. Future meetings are still planned. Senators will have weekly set goals, like they're gonna have new projects, redesigning bathrooms and EV chargers in progress. Fee change is under discussion and the final decision is expected to come in May. Budget requests for various upcoming events and activities are to be requested well in advance. Leadership retreat plans similar to kind of like science camp. Centralizing ASFC information under a single email. And then ASFC is working on centralizing all emails for better communication. ICC is updating club website and account balances. They talked about Stanford summer camp for leadership skills, which volunteering will begin February 1st from 8 a.m. to 4.
Are there any other externally shared governance reports? Okay. Are there any internal DASG committee reports?
There's gonna be a DASG special bylaws meeting in this Friday. For details, it's on the administration chat Discord.
Are there any other internal DASG committee reports? Yeah.
So, the marketing committee established subcommittees last week at our first meeting. And we also finished and posted the spotlight audition post on Instagram. And also the midterm election post for the legislative affairs liaison and budget analyst, and also the election info sessions post. And the interns are done with the DSG tracker that we're going to be using update and other stuff. And we also updated the senator photos on our school website. And the but for the legislative affairs liaisons, we're gonna do that next week. We're gonna be done with that by next week. And also the emails for spotlight audition forms and info sessions have been sent out. In progress, we currently have the brand kit that we're working on the graphical elements, and we're also putting out the student discount flyers and having them put on glass panels. And also the spotlight audition forms, online publications requests were sent to those, and we are currently working on general elections voting for all.
Are there any other internal DASG committee reports?
As we met today, we started off with winter resource fair updates. It will be held next Wednesday. I don't remember the time. It should be like early, like 11 a.m.-ish to 1 to 2 p.m.-ish. In the main quad, we'll be having hot cocoa. And then we started a new project with our interns on increasing DASG awareness. So they're starting on different initiatives with that. And then we have also our new advisor for our committee to aid in the transition of full distribution. So our new advisor is going to be Malia. They're very happy to have her and thankful for all the work Malia has done for her.
Are there any other internal DASG committee reports? Yeah.
Finance did not meet this Monday, but updates from Friday's budget deliberation. We're pretty much done with that. There's just 3 more programs left who we have gotten the information from, and we'll be finalizing the deliberations this Monday. And then we should have the final amounts ready to display.
Are there any other internal DASG committee reports?
Finish the budget distribution for the.
Any other internal DASG committee reports?
We'll be having our Club Love and Connection Day, which will be held on February 12th. That will be part of our event, and we hope that we have other students coming in. And we also have a talent show audition on February 28th. So don't forget to fill those forms out, which was sent on the Discord, along with Instagram posts.
Any other internal DASG committee reports? Okay. There's nothing on the consent calendar, so we'll move on. Business item 1. Okay, so business item 1 is going to be presented by Adriana Garcia, Shelia Ramos Garcia, and Felisa Avui. I don't know, I apologize if I might have misread those names. But it's about a campus-wide equity rubric that they're seeking DHG's approval for. This is just an information and discussion item, but it's to inform everybody about that. And take it away. And if you would like, I can stop sharing my screen if you have a presentation. Or
That'd be great.
Yes, we do. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Well, not so happy. This week has been really difficult, especially for our communities. But we're making the best of it. And thank you all for your support towards HEFAS, and our
one
efforts.
second. Sorry, Dennis, is the audio working or does it need to be?
Should be working, but it's
Can you guys hear us? Because we can definitely hear you.
We can hear you, but I just want to make sure there are speakers that. No, would be this. And then speaker two might be this.
no, it has to be, the audio needs to go through the from the, otherwise, the microphone will pick up that feedback.
Then I think this would proceed.
Yeah,
I just
I
want,
think it's just, on there and.
that's
If you can speak up or adjust your audio settings if possible, because it's, your volume's a little low.
Is it the same right now?
I think, this will work just fine. I just wanted to make sure. But yes, I apologize. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll try to project my voice to make sure that you all hear me. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Shayla Ramos Garcia. I'm the Undocumented Student Support Program Coordinator. I oversee HEFAS and UndocuSTEM. And we do thank DSG for your support over the last 15 years with HEFAS. So thank you for having us here. I'll pass it over to Felisa to introduce herself.
My name is Felisa Valabi. I'm also a counselor on campus. I work with our ESL population, our adult school students, some of our English support courses, and then I'm also the undocumented student counseling liaison. So I'm around campus a lot. Feel free to always come and ask me questions. I'm here to support students always. But we're here today to be able to show you guys our equity rubric. We've been working on this for a while. I think our next slide is Adriana here yet?
No, but I can get started on the first few slides.
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome. So just to give you all some context on how this started, a couple of years ago, we had a career fair where Border Patrol was invited, along with, other institutions. It was an open invitation for a career fair. HEFAS ended up being right next to them, and had a huge impact on our undocumented student population. From this came about conversations around Sanctuary Campus, Sanctuary District, which we're working on, but also what do we do when that kind of type of thing happens? What policies or agreements do we have as an institution to make sure that we are always equity minded, as well as protecting student safety? So that's kind of where this work came about. So keep that context in mind. So what this is an equitable assessment tool to apply to events and decision-making at De Anza College, all right? So this is being used as a tool to think about how do we apply equity. Who are the key stakeholders? Equity personnel, senior administrations, the Office of Equity, Undocu-Solidarity, which is our training committee, EJUS, which is Educational Justice for Undocumented Students, affinity groups, shared governance, including DESG. We want this committee that is going to oversee the equity rubric to be under EAC, which is our Equity Action Council, which a couple of you all are a part of, as well as being part of the work of the College Strategic Planning Group as well. Why? Why do we do this? Why is this important? So this is to make trauma-informed decisions, to pursue harm reduction in the events that we have, to keep equity in mind, and accountability to end structural inequities and create safe student spaces, right? Lasting, especially in the next 4 years, we don't want to, for example, invite a speaker that, maybe their values do not align with the values or equity mindedness of our campus, and or they will cause harm, right? All these things are possible. That's why we need to be prepared and have something in place. How is this going to happen? So application for this rubric is for specifically on-campus events that are marketed to all students. So this is not necessarily for like smaller events or events that are marketed for certain communities or programs. This is for big events such as career fair and such. For programming impacting students, also when inviting guests and organizations and individuals to our campus, and for leadership to use for their own decision-making as well. At this point, is there any questions? Okay, and Adriana is not here yet, so I'll just continue.
Yeah, we're good.
So what are the visions and goals? So we want this to be used as a tool to address systemic barriers. Sorry, this is barriers for students most impacted by systems of oppression in educational settings, specifically at De Anza, right? So this includes many of our impacted communities, are like undocumented students, first-year students, or students from particular ethnic or racial backgrounds. This working document is also expected to evolve per the current landscape of the institution, which means it evolves in real time based on the community needs. So we welcome any feedback. We will apply the knowledge as practice and paradigm. We will assess our biases and reflect on our self-awareness to make decisions that are inclusive, equitable, and just, and acknowledging how institutional harm perpetuates oppressive mechanisms inside and outside of the classroom. We'll also eliminate inequities and at the very least apply harm reduction responses. The scope of this tool, or the legs to the vision, this is a tool that defines where we are regarding equity and respecting our students, right? So this says a lot about us as an institution. A tool that provides a checklist on how to be inclusive and create a safe space for our students for event production, programming, and other activities. A tool for protecting students from institutional harm. A tool for funding decision-making. A tool for planning events, programming, and decision-making using best practices for supporting our students as identified in our Student Equity Plan Reimagined as well. So who are these prioritized groups per their Student Equity Plan Reimagined? As I mentioned, that would include Black, Filipinx, Latinx, Native American, Pacific Islander, and disappropriately impacted students. In addition, we've also included students like undocumented students or disabled students as well in our equity rubric. Any questions at this point? And if there is any, we can also hold space at the end for questions, if not at this point. I'll pass it over to Felisa.
Awesome. Okay, so if we're talking about kind of the history and overview, like Shayla said, we started this actually based on responses as a harm reduction to our undocumented students and what happened with Border Patrol on campus. But really, we thought about how can we be intentional as a college who's constantly in a space forward-facing in the community, talking about how we're equity-minded and we use equity at the core of our decision-making, but we really didn't have anything that created a tangible ability to have there be accountability for any of this work. So we started this in the fall of 23 as a draft that we had taken from other colleges. In the summer of 24, we met with leadership to finalize a version and to send to our district legal counsel to make sure that we're kind of within our realm of what we can do legally. And then In the fall, we actually met with our legal counsel to get their final approval. And now we've started our rounds in fall and in winter with our shared governance, trying to get approval and kind of get there to be some legitimacy behind our requests that when we bring it up to senior administration and hopefully above. So you can kind of see where when we're at in terms of trying to get this going and trying to get folks to have seen it. We definitely still have work to do. We're trying to get this done and passed up to the Board of Trustees by February. And then the foundations of this so that folks know where we pulled pieces from. This is coming from our Foothill De Anza board priorities. It's coming from Student Equity Plan Reimagined, from the Educational Master Plan, from the California Community College Chancellor's Office, from Student Equity and Achievement Plans, and then we've also extensively collaborated with our district legal counsel. Any questions on how we created it or what we used to inform the rubric itself? I'm hoping that a lack of questions doesn't mean you guys can't hear us. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Perfect. So what we will use in the rubric ideally to be able to pass events and speakers and whatnot through it is an equity scale. So does this event or activity center equity and student safety at its core? And then on the next slide, you can see kind of what that would look like. So for each one of our categories, it would say not at all, somewhat for minimal groups, unsure, or maybe not applicable, mostly for most underrepresented, above 70%, and then 5 would be completely for all students. So this is a snippet, a screenshot of a couple of the scenarios in the equity rubric. So for the first one, the question is student populations and priority groups. Is this in fact something that is supporting that? And then we would apply the equity scale. And the folks that were requesting to do the event would actually fill out this first column so that they could see, and maybe a process of self-evaluation before it goes to the committee to then get feedback and as quickly as we can to get feedback to get approval for events. So that's the idea. You guys can see some of these options. In the next slide, there's also some categories that we took out of the rubric itself. So things like accountability and assessment, elimination of systemic racism. Have we looked at job protections and in the educational master plan, increasing employment outcomes, and then other important concerns, right? So we have a really kind of comprehensive lens on how we are supporting our students using an equity framework. So like we mentioned, the idea is that this would be something that is housed in our Equity Action Council, and then it would be its own subcommittee. And so then we can go to the next slide. And you can see like in an ideal world, right? We also know that this is new and we're gonna have to be flexible, but in an ideal world, this gets submitted. If your event is in June, it gets submitted in March. You get feedback, you get clarification, you get support, you get ideas and support implement some equity elements that people hadn't considered previously, and then you are able to proceed with your event. And obviously you can see the things to consider. We know that there will have to be some adjustment on the committee's part, and that will mean meeting very frequently so that we can have there be minimal lag time in getting these requests completed. Any questions on the process? Okay.
Katya, sorry, we do have a question.
Okay.
How did you come up with the timeline for, I guess, how far back people who want to do events need to, complete the rubric?
Yeah, that's a super fair question. We did it kind of based on planning committees for events that already exist. So in particular, we kind of modeled it off of Diwali's event and how far in advance they start planning and thinking through what they need to do to be able to implement an event. That also includes some of the elements like facilities and who else are the key stakeholders to include in an event planning. We also have, I mean, again, this is an ideal situation. We do have it on here of things to consider that the request needs to be submitted at a minimum of 2 weeks in advance. So that we did that kind of based on respect for the fact that this is new, and we know that we don't want people to not be able to do an event because there's this new maybe perceived obstacle. We don't want that to feel like something that is stopping people from doing it. We want it to be as accessible as possible. So the idea right now is that the request would be a minimum of 2 weeks in advance, and that the committee is going to be meeting weekly so that if things come in, they can kind of get really quickly get feedback back. But this in particular is an ideal timeline. I think will be we'll need to be fluid, and we'll need to be able to have it be a kind of gray area as we learn best practices on what is working and not working. But the long answer to that is that it's based on Diwali and how quickly they meet to start planning for their events.
Thank you.
All right. Shayla, I think
Vamos
this is
a, I can pass it to Adriana to finish
Oh,
us
yeah.
off.
There we go.
You. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Felisa and Sheila. Thank you, DSG, for having us as well. But yeah, so we are here because we do need your help, right? And the help is to ensure that we approve the rubric as this assessment so that we can apply for campus-wide events and decision-making. And the decision-making is not just about events. It could be about policy, best practices, maybe through a participatory budgeting process, right? So it could take, it can be implemented at different levels. And so our call to action to DSG today is asking you all to approve this equity rubric as a, I would say, work in progress, or consciously knowing that it's an evolving tool to do the equitable assessment to the campus-wide events and the decision-making on our campus. What do y'all think?
That concludes our presentation, and we certainly can share the presentation with you all, including the link to the equity rubric draft. But yeah, if there's any questions at this point or feedback, we would appreciate that.
I don't think there are any other questions, but I think the PDFs, yeah, or hyperlinks, that would be, of the presentation of the rubric would be fantastic, and I will share that also with all the senators.
And then can I ask you guys a process question? So you guys do a first read, and then next time you guys meet is when you would take an action on whether or not you support it?
Yes.
Cool. I'm only saying that out loud because I think that one of the things we've really been trying to work on, like Adriana and Shayla both said, is to apply this to decision-making right on campus. And in particular, one of the things we would love to be able to have senior administration and other folks utilize a tool like this, whether it's this or another one, in thinking of some of our hiring positions that are coming up, and are they really student-centered, and are they supporting like our most vulnerable students and our students directly on campus? And so as with the current administration, thinking through like in particular LGBTQ students, our students that are marginalized, and our undocumented students, you know, whenever we can get approval from you guys, the better, so that we can kind of have there be accountability with our administration about supporting the students that need the support. So I appreciate that. Thanks you.
We have a question, Yemi.
Yeah, by the time we commit to an action, like vote on it, will we have the finalized rubric? Like currently, to my understanding, it's a draft. Will we have the finalized rubric by the time we vote?
Were you able to catch that?
Yeah, so this is the final version of it as a draft. And so the reason that we say it like that is that it's the finalized version, but it will stay a draft until we work on it. It's a living document. So this is the approval that we're asking for, is with this draft. So what you have is what we have complete. And then our caveat is the idea that it is likely that we learn best practices along the way. And we would obviously take some feedback if you said something specifically about how you didn't like word choice, or you had questions about something else, we could amend it in that capacity. But this is in fact the draft that we have to provide.
And we are sharing it with other shared governance processes. We already went through classified, now we're here with you. So we actually have more feedback from classified that we need to integrate. We will be presenting at Academic Senate next week, and I am sure we're gonna have a lot of amazing feedback. And so we're gonna take all of that collectively and eventually present it for College Council. Mind you, maybe at Academic Senate or at College Council might be a similar process of a first read. And so with that in mind, we're gonna stay in our humility and bring in that feedback. So by the time we reach College Council, it'll be the best version possible based on the feedback and the questions that we receive.
Dennis?
Yeah, just clarification for the Senate. I mean, anytime something like this is presented, until it's approved, it's a draft.
Right.
So, it's not gonna be final when it's presented for approval. And the final approval in this case is gonna be College Council, yes. And even then, that doesn't mean it's set in stone.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that, Dennis. That's exactly right. And we're actually hoping to be able to take it to the board as well. So it might be a while till we could say something is quote unquote official, but this is definitely what we have to give to folks right now.
I just have a quick discussion. Luca. What's that? Just one moment.
Yeah, one moment, please.
And what is important to also note is that when we do equity work needs to be ever evolving. And so what I have learned is as we try to bring in tools or toolkits or things that help us in our decision making, that those things need to be a work in progress, evolving, or as Felisa said, living documents, because it has to change with the needs of that group. And especially when we think about how our decisions will impact those most impacted, as described in our student equity and achievement plan and our student equity plan reimagined.
Yeah, I'll re-preface for the Senate as well. This is purposefully an information discussion. These links, these files will be shared. You will be able to look at them again. You'll be able to generate your own questions, feedback, and then approval will be given, we'll vote on approval for a future Senate meeting. And yeah, I mean, if there's any other questions as well. I think that's it. Thank you very, very much for coming. And we really appreciate this presentation.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
all.
the consideration and thanks for letting us come in and present it to you. We appreciate it.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Okay, I'll reshare the screen. Okay. Moving on to Senate business item 2. So I will be handing this off to Administration Committee and Aura. There's a lot of different code changes, both administration code changes as well as elections code changes. That's handled by administration. So I'll hand it off to them. Well, come on up there.
Can you talk about the SSCC foundation first?
Yeah, I can give a brief overview. I don't know if you have anything else. I mean, I just want to, I guess there's been, questions about what it is and what DASG's role is and so on. So just to provide at least a little bit of basic information and where to get, more. So for those that are unaware, SSCCC. So SSCCC, should have spelled this out, but SSCCC is the Student Senate for California Community Colleges. Essentially, it's the student government, but at the statewide level for community colleges. So basically, the California version of DASG. Their website is ssccc.org. And more information can be specifically found here, mission. And essentially they are, what are they, advocating for the community college students at the state level. And part of that is, through legislative processes. One of their main events is, the General Assembly, which occurs in the spring. For us, because we're on a quarter system, things are always a bit off. It is usually like it's spring break or right before spring break or right at the end of spring break is when it occurs for us. The date for this year should be posted. So this year it's April 4th through April 6th. And at the General Assembly, the delegate from each college, so each college gets one voting delegate. More people can attend the General Assembly, but just as with the Senate, you have a chair of finance and they are the vote, so De Anza College has a delegate at the SSCCC for the General Assembly. And they go over all the potential resolutions or legislative items that are being proposed to address for the upcoming year. So basically, these are the priorities that they will talk to legislators or discuss at SSCCC for the next year to try to get legislators to approve or whatever the case may be, basically general advocacy work. 4 council community colleges at the state level. Since last year, the DSG has not attended yet. It just we didn't even really know about it as much, and we've had some issues with SSCCC communication, at least in this region. But is that even here? Yes, Pastor does. Okay. So starting last year, well, I guess 2 years ago technically, but last fall, so fall 2023, they started something called the Advocacy Academy. And this is more of a leadership development conference, kind of like the Seesaw conference that you all attended, or many of you attended. Similar thing, but this one is hosted by SSCCC and has also workshops and things like that. And it's all related to advocacy work. And open to all students. So November 22nd, 24th, 2024 was the second time they hosted that. For 2023, this was the first one. December 1st to 3rd, 2023 is when that first Advocacy Academy occurred. And there's also regions within the SSCCC, and well, this applies to the state. I mean, it's not the SSCCC thing entirely, but the state is broken up into regions. So De Anza College is part of Region 4. And they all might have a variety of, they might have a different number of colleges, but generally they're based on geographic regions. So for Region 4, we have Cabrillo, De Anza, Evergreen Valley, Footville, Gavilan, Hartnell, Mission, Monterey Peninsula, Ohlone, San Jose City, and West Valley colleges. There are regional positions that students from the different colleges apply for, and there's internal election. And there are region meetings. So generally speaking, the legislative affairs liaison for DSG is the delegate for the college, and they would receive the newsletters and so on, although I believe pretty sure anyone can sign up for those if they wish, and you can find the information for that. But ideally, the issue or De Anza should also be involved at the regional level, at least in communication and providing feedback. And then, of course, pretty much you have to go to the general assembly. I mean, it's not like required, but it would not be a good idea for, DHG to not send at least one person to each year's general assembly. Okay?
Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong, but SSCCC is a place for student delegates from each community college to vote for legislative.
Yeah, that's the general assembly, yeah.
Right, that's the general. So it's important that DHG is part of it.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Let me see if I can go a little more information. 2024, that we can look at. Good, there, okay,
Dennis,
yes,
I think that sums up the main gist of information that we really need to move on for the code changes.
and, all right, and then you can see past agendas and so on the website.
And then with that preface about SSCCC, I want to invite administration committee up to present their code changes.
And I'll share, just a moment. A little clearer.
Been here for a long time.
Yeah. Bringing that to the, both.
So in the last week, the Senate meeting, I kind of mentioned that we are removing some positions and then adding some positions and kind of doing some changes, drastic changes. So today I will present that. So this is the administration committee code. And it says, the DHG administration committee shall consist of the following voting members. DHG vice president who will assume the position of the administration. So we're proposing to remove the DHG vice president.
Title.
We're proposing to removing the title. And you guys might be like, well, why? So I'll just say, if we go to the responsibilities. Responsibilities. Actually, not that one, like.
Oh, the committee.
Done.
Which one?
You mean page 3? Yes, yeah, page 3. Section 2. No. This one. Section 4 in article, hang on, it's page 1.
So are all the duties of vice president staying, or are all the duties of chair of administration the same as the duties of DHG vice president in the new code?
Yes.
No, this was the old code, like, yes. But this was the old code that we didn't change. This was a part of the old code. It says, oversee the recording of the senators' completion of their duties and responsibilities as outlined Article 2, Section 8 of DHG bylaws, such as the sharing of external shared governance reports, completion of field hours and office hours, and others as mandated by the section. So we said this is a vice president, but it's actually the administration committee. So the whole thing was on just administration committee. And then now, that's why we're saying to removing the position, because it causes a lot of confusion. When you apply for vice president, you are not actually know what to do. You're just like, oh, I want to be the vice president. But if you change it to chair of administration, then you would know what to do because it's an administration code. Like I had so many questions while being the vice president. Firstly, when you become the vice president, because like vice president has 2 titles, chair of administration committee and the vice president, they were like, okay, which one of you do the most? So most of the people who becomes the vice president just do the vice president work and kind of gives it, kind of do the side, administration work as like a side job. So the administration committee is not very efficient to work with. And then there's the same one. So if you remove the vice president title, then it will have no confusions. It'll just be that administration chair of the administration. And when you are campaigning, you will campaign as chair of administration, so people will know what they're voting for. People will know, people will check the administration committee, objectives and their tasks, goals, and then they're like, okay, this person is good for administration, this person is not really good for administration, and then they can vote like that. And then secondly, since we already removed the coalition between the president,
Requiring them to vote together.
required
Not
to
everyone.
work together, it is just better to become the chair of administration. Also, a second question is that I get a lot is that if you're the vice president, why are you getting paid as the same as the other chairs? Like, why is not in the between? But if you become the chair of administration, that question is also clears up. It's just like because of all of the confusion that, like, all of this. Any questions? Any objections?
Just for clarification, we kind of touched on this last week when Oro was talking about the president and vice president no longer being required to run together and the election code changes when we were looking at those. It's really just removing the title vice president and replacing it with chair of administration, which is really the same position. All the duties are the same. It's no change really other than the title. And just clarifying things for both the students who are voting and the people applying for the position. So they know what they're applying for and students know what they're voting for, what to ask the candidates, what to look for in the candidates. It kind of goes along with why they shouldn't be elected with the senator, with the president either, because before the president was campaigning, the vice president or chair of administration was not, no one knew what they were voting for, or if they were qualified, they just kind of got whoever was running for the president. So this what helps with that issue, and then two, clarifying what the position is.
Yes. That was like,
And what they do. I mean, the administrative, basically, they're the administrative lead for the Senate, tracking attendance, doing all those things. Midterm elections, and then other things like that. So it's the same position, just a different title and clarification.
and in the bylaws, we'll still say, in the absence of the president, the chair of administration will act as the president.
Or
We'll still
well,
have,
they'll be the vice chair for,
yeah,
there's two sections that are related, but
well, we'll get to that. But like, this one, do we have any objections? Do we have any questions? Any discussion? No, we're good? Okay, good. Okay, can we go back to first?
yeah, go back to the comment. Okay, here we go.
Okay, then we have two elections commissioner, because we need more elections commissioner, guys. We have. How many midterm elections?
Oh.
5, 6.
Well, no, it's about the. Essentially, there's a lot of work from one person to do, especially when you consider all the information sessions and everything else. And so the proposal is to just have two people that are dedicated to working on whether it's midterm or the annual election.
It's just better to make people work for the elections, since we have a lot of midterm elections and general elections and the internal elections as well. It's more efficient. And not normally, you are going to remove the list of Elijah and put those responsibilities to the chair of administration. But PPS stepped up.
Or,
They
yeah, we had a proposal from
had a proposal from
SRE.
Asari, Katya, and Yen. They said PPS is public policy school, which takes care of the delegation and legislation in general. So they said, can they be a public policy Elijah and not a rep? So they're not a really a program. So being a rep requires to be a program. Yes. Okay.
Oh, yeah, sure. So basically, as PPS, we already work with that literacy and now training to how to deal with like delegate and stuff like that. And since the legislative affairs liaison has the same duties as us, we're suggesting that we take over their reverse. That basically.
So there'll be a senator now. the PPS, and they will call as a public post evaluation, and they will do the list affairs liaison work. Also, we're not funding them because they do get funded by their own, organization. So, but they'll be a senator still. But we're going to, if you ask, will they do the same thing as a senator does? Because they have their own shared governance and own office hours, we'll kind of, specify it in the bylaws saying like, every senator has to do this except the public policy liaison, like that.
We'll clarify all those issues.
Yeah, all of those. And for the elections for the public policy liaisons, they will come from the PPS. PPS have their own elections, have their own interview process, so they will just come from the PPS. So we're not going to do any elections process for the public policy liaison. Any objections? Any questions? Discussion?
I'm not really familiar with the election commission work, so what kind of work do you do? And there's some international ones there.
Election committee does info sessions, the mandatory candidate orientation. They answer questions regarding any election related questions, and they also organize the elections as well. So last fall quarter, I did 6 info sessions. I attended all 6 of them. And this quarter I have 7 elections, but I cannot attend all of them because I have some classes that are like clashing with them as well. I also have to do the mandatory candidate orientation. But since it's only a one-time thing, some students cannot attend those because of time conflict. So I have to do another backup candidate orientation, just like a alternative time for this, for me to do a orientation for those students who cannot. And
Regularly scheduled.
Yeah.
They also prepare a lot of the information, like the slides and things for the information sessions and orientation, things like that as well. Basically, anything related to managing or putting on the elections.
And also like organizing the application process as well. Yeah, but that's just a regular work. If you do have a midterm election, then they take on midterm election as well.
And then midterm elections, whenever they're needed, they also work on all that stuff.
So two people is much more efficient, and they're also students too. Okay, so we don't have any objections or discussion around here. I'll put them. Okay, you have objections?
Question or?
This is objections, okay, objective.
What was that?
We're talking about objectives.
Oh, yeah.
All of them are the same as the last. Agriculture, we just added, we will be DSG and propose and necessary updates at least once per year. That's the only thing we added. Think about the right tab.
Oh, wait, you're saying? Yeah, this was kind of something that was missed anyway, actually, I don't see. Hold on, I'll do a quick search. Because all the codes have something about review their code at least once a year. But. Oh, yeah, we're missing that too, actually. Yeah, that should be in there too, but that's missing. Hold on. So if you look at the other codes, at least they're supposed to, they say something about review the committee code at least once a year and so on. So. So yeah, that's supposed to be in here as well. And in the case of administration, they would also be moving bylaws, so. Some reason we missed it in the administration code. So those are just missing from the administration code, it should have been there in the first place.
Yeah, in the objectives. so we got removed A.
It was confusing and we added it to,
We did
B.
want clarification on B.
so I mean, I guess this would be to do it.
These are all of the last ID codes. And then the officers, we removed the vice chair of administration, we put DSG chair of administration instead of the vice president. We put DSG public policy liaison, we put DSG elections commissioner too. And then individual duties and responsibilities. For the DSG chair of administration, we added,
So these were basically copied and pasted from the bylaws under a vice president duty.
yeah, under the. And then we said, act as a vice chair of the DSG Senate and DSG Executive Advisory Committee. For the last part as well. Like I said, we're changing the title. But then officially, there will be no vice president.
And just so you, and I think a lot of the codes actually need this change made, so, so last year, the vice chair position, like the official position was removed, because they really didn't have, much to do as far as individual duties. The way it used to be before it was added as a, separate position was that, one of the, people on the committee, one of the internal officers, basically, and it could be the same one all year, or it could be different each quarter, but they would essentially, somebody would volunteer to be the vice chair, essentially just take the minutes and, keep track of attendance for the committee. And that's the main duties of the vice chair. So basically, it would just be, instead of a separate position that only has one duty, they would basically each quarter or each year, somebody from within the committee would volunteer to just take minutes and stuff. So that's why they did.
Yeah, really quick. Would you scroll up, what does it say about acts as vice chair of the DSG Senate and DSG Executive Advisory Committee?
Yes.
So what is
And that's
that?
currently in there, it's anyway for the vice president. I believe, I'm pretty sure.
I'm just, well, what does that mean, acts as vice chair of the DSG
So
Senate?
since we're removing the title of vice president. Excuse,
I mean-
let's say you couldn't make it to the one of the Senate meetings or executive advisory meeting, committee meetings, then I will chair it. And if I couldn't make it, then I will chair, it. Still have the hierarchy, it's just administrative. And then for the DSG executive advisory vice chair, they have to take the minutes in the executive advisory. So I put them in there saying that they have to take the minutes anyway. Okay, let's do it. For the public policy liaisons, everything is the same except the name, and we added one more,
Yeah,
saying that
this
they have to
Should have been
attend.
there in the first place, so somehow it didn't say attend the general assembly.
Yes. Then. And then for DSG elections commissioner, we added taking the minutes of DSG administration committee meetings. And the elections commissioner should be prepared to step into the role of the chair during meetings in the absence of the chair.
So just to clarify, you're gonna have 3 internal senators.
Yes, but 2 of them is funded by DSG and 1. That's it.
So the PPS senator is not funded through the DASG?
No.
Well, it's this, I mean, it's not specific, it's just that in the scholarship code, with all the changes that have been happening, it's saying that, that to the, student leader scholarship, is, basically, if any position is getting paid through their program or whatever, like student trustee gets paid by the district, then they're not eligible for the student leader scholarship. That applies to all the different liaisons or whatever they end up being. Yeah, that's.
Saving money.
So that applies to all those positions.
So this is
If they're
done.
already being paid, they just don't qualify for the scholarship, but if they're not, they can be part of it.
So administration code is done now. Any objections? Any questions? Any discussions? We're approving this stuff. Okay, next week.
Next week, yeah, next week.
And then, are you guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Yes? Yep, okay, okay.
For the midterm election, do we only for the legislative, because all or the PPS?
So PPS, we don't do internal elections for PPS. PPS will,
They're chosen by their
assign
from
their
own.
in their own.
branch.
So-
So we're gonna have midterm elections for elections commissioner. Because we're approving this next week.
Just a question like, as a election commissioner, do you think it's a work that really one person can do?
Yes.
Or?
No, it's a lot. I
I'm
want
just
to
saying
take
like,
up a lot of my time. Aside from my own general senator responsibilities and put a lot of time into the elections as well. I'm going to take time to change the elections code as well. Because I meet up with Dennis at a specific time, because the administration meeting time is not enough as well. And also, the info sessions take up a lot of time from my studies, preparing the slides.
And
I mean,
on
it's,
top of
it's,
that, there's complaint forms too. And on top of that, there's gonna be runoff elections too, like there's a lot of stuff.
I mean, basically anything related to the election,
It's just hard.
we'll be going to the election.
And that's why we have a whole specific code just for elections.
Yeah, and then having two people is gonna be helping with the, like, different voices as well, like they can see each other's mistakes, they can work together. It's just better to have two people.
And also, I receive a lot of questions from students who are interested in DSG as well. I receive them a lot every day, and sometimes, as someone who's also a student, I forget to answer to them as well. Yeah, so it's just a lot of my.
and then another thing that wasn't really discussed, and Dennis or correct me if I'm wrong, but the liaison, get the exact DSG liaison, all they did was go to SSCCC and do bylaw changes.
Yeah.
So they didn't have as many duties.
I mean, the whole committee reviews the bylaws when needed.
Yeah. So the bylaw changes are very minimal at most, and then SSCCC once. And that was,
Well, the General Assembly is. But what I wanted to say was, I mean, the position still exists, it's just that since BPS already does that and they get trained and everything, so that we're not, but as far as the elections commission, think about it. We have multiple budget analysts, we have multiple event coordinators, we have multiple flea market liaisons. You know, simply because there's quite a bit of work for those, and elections commissioner is no different. So for some positions, we do have more than one. It's not new or unheard of.
Yes. I need to discuss, okay.
You said active vice chair, what are the stipulations for the chair of the administration? Is that just so that they can have the abilities to take the meeting notes for the committee?
For executive committee, yes, and also. and at the same-
Essentially, that's currently one of the vice president duties anyway. They're considered the vice chair for exec, and in the case of Senate, if Luca's sick, they would be the first person. And then there's a section in the bylaws about hierarchy as well, so they would be, we would make sure that's correct.
So why would you have to say active vice president instead of vice chair?
Well, because that's what they'd be doing. They'd be vice chair for the exec committee. And they'd be vice chair for the Senate if the chair is absent.
Vice president is the vice president of the DASG. So the chair of administration is not gonna be the vice president of the DASG, it's gonna be vice chair of the Senate meetings and vice chair of the executive advisory meetings and the chair of administration meetings.
I move to approve.
I
So
think
you're.
it's.
Thank you, thank you. I expect this from you guys.
Discussion this week.
Oh, it's
But
an
next week-
action.
How do you guys?
I move to end discussion.
Yeah, it's not supposed to. All code changes have to be.
Anybody second?
It's an action item.
I second.
I'm not disagreeing that it was accidental.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, say nay. Okay, we're moving on.
The elections.
Elections will change.
This one though.
So who moved and seconded?
So it was, Van that moved,
No, it was to end discussion. So who moved and seconded to end discussion?
Van moved,
Ben and.
Gavin seconded, and
And
it
it
agreed.
was approved, okay.
Now elections code changes.
Let's go. We're gonna approve this one.
Yeah, we have second.
We did a few more updates, to the elections code from today's administration meeting.
So it's supposed to be action administration is.
I don't think we're allowed to approve it if it's not an action item. It doesn't matter, it's wrong.
Okay, I don't think it's that serious.
Okay, sure.
Well, we can reconfirm next week if necessary, but,
We have to probably not because elections happening.
well, yeah, we've got election coming up, but if there are objections, we'll update the bylaws in minute, or the agenda in minutes, and if there are any objections from the public, we can, re-approve it or put it back again on the agenda next week. But yeah, no, the admin committee should have been in this information discussion, election code discussion. I think we'll find it again. So at the very least, we'll go over everything. All what we did last week and then any updates. All right.
The election code, so
Yeah.
everything is the same, you just change the elections to administration. And then. Last week.
Yeah, I don't think anything.
You can just
changed here.
present, the one that we updated.
Yeah. So let's,
Hold on, just 1 second. And I think I forgot to mention this for admin code, or maybe I didn't, I forgot. Just for clarification, this applies to admin code, elections code, bylaws, whatever. Don't worry about numbering and lettering and formatting. Once everything's approved, make sure everything is fixed and looks correct and so on.
we don't mind that.
Yeah. Okay, so.
Okay, so these are all,
Yeah, I don't recall changes here. I think there
On
was-
page 7, we removed the vice president and then just, as part of the chairs of committees, so we just added.
This was, yeah, we didn't make any changes. Oh, actually, I did make one change to make it clearer. I just added the words, executive officer here. We forgot to read that one, please. So we're trying to clarify what's executive officer, what's internal officer. So this would be. Oh, I forgot to put this, so just need to add that here as well.
you already presented this one last week, so I'm not gonna say anything on it. Okay, so for this, we put, yeah, Dennis, can you go up?
Up?
Yes,
Where?
yeah. Move it down, Article 3 candidates.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so for this one, we remove the vice president, because now it's the chair of administration, so it's gonna be the DSG chairs of committees. And then,
Now we start to get to some of the changes. So there's this executive officer campaign.
we
Okay.
added,
So we added candidates must not walk in hallways or pathways while campaigning. Interfere with other candidates as they are campaigning. And then this one, we're trying to make sure it's clear and not too restrictive as well. So candidates cannot assist the student to vote in any way. Candidates can only direct students to the voting page by providing the URL or a QR code to the campaign materials. And then this whole be present when a student is voting. If one, candidates at one end of the dining room and student is at the other end of the dining room, it seems a bit too restrictive in that case. But instead of just watch or be present, candidates cannot directly observe the ballot or influence the student as they are voting. So hopefully that's clear enough, but if anyone has any feedback or suggestions, let us know.
Runoff election procedure.
Yeah,
Okay, so
Well-
to avoid having no.
still doesn't quite fix runoff elections entirely, but we have some more feedback on that, but we did come up with, so I came up with a certain idea, then Luca had some feedback, and then we discussed it some more at admin committee. Okay, so here, I think we didn't change anything new here about campaign modification.
Basically, if you do this option, you might not need to have to do runoff election.
Okay, so
Like
we
most of the
did,
time.
because we had a lot of questions about this
90%
last, huh?
I talked about runoff election.
Oh, right, yeah, no, we still have something else before we get to that. So there's been a lot of, confusion about. Okay, anyway. So what exactly happens during the complaint process or the appeal process if needed? So we want to make sure that's clear. So please review these two sections and let us know if you have any feedback. I'm hopefully it's clear enough now, but just in case. So complaint process, so students must submit a complaint form with evidence by the deadline, in the election schedule. All complaint forms shall be reviewed by the administration committee at the election certification and complaint meeting. Complainants must attend the certification and complaint meeting to present their complaints and evidence and answer any questions about their complaint. And this shall include presentation of witnesses if necessary. That's kind of part of the evidence, just to make it clear to people. And then candidates must be notified of complaints and invited to the certification and complaint meeting to respond to the complaints. We'll invite them, whether they come or not is up to them, of course, but at least it says in here that they will be notified and invited to come. We don't want it to be, not, secret or anything. So, the administration committee shall record all meetings in which deliberations regarding alleged violations or disqualification of any candidate occurs. Administration can wait.
We added 2 new sections, which is the complaint process and the appeals
Then,
process, just to clarify more on that.
Okay, and then any decisions to disqualify any candidate.
Okay, is there any questions, discussion, objective for the complaint process? Nothing is good? Okay, let's go to the appeals process.
Oh, and actually, that reminds me about a change to this schedule section. Appeals process, so candidates found guilty of a complaint may file an appeal. All appeals of administration committee decisions shall be heard by the DASG Senate. So the DASG administration committee shall present their complaints and their decisions to the DASG Senate. Candidates must attend the DASG Senate meeting to present their appeal. This shall include presentation of new evidence or witnesses if necessary. And then complainants may attend the DASG Senate meeting if they choose to do so. And then the DASG Senate shall record all meetings in which deliberations regarding alleged violations or disqualification of any candidate occurs. Actually, no. This is, any decision, actually, this should have been changed, so any decision to reverse. Yeah, in the case of appeals, you're basically reversing the decision of the administration.
Okay. Any discussion, objection, feedback? Questions? That's good. Okay. Now we move on to the normal election.
No, before I forget again, there was one thing in the schedule section related to the appeals. Okay, so we changed 5th business day after the last day of polling to by the 5th, I guess. There should be there to by the 5th business day, is Not sure why we had to wait 5 days. I mean, I think we're planning to do it, Wednesday, during the administration committee time for the appeal meeting, or for the complaint meeting, this quarter. If we were forced to do it 5 days, it would be a Friday, which campus is closed anyway, for the most part. So by the 5th business day, and then to make sure there's time between the complaint meeting and the appeal meeting. Instead of Wednesday after the complaint meeting, which in this case will be the same day. It needs to be Wednesday, at least one business day after. So that there's time for the candidates or the committee or whoever to, prepare. It can't be, 1 hour. Okay, so that's it for that, and then let's go back.
Okay, so
Oh,
for
so
the,
this is where the change related to, reducing the possibility of needing a runoff election comes in. Oh,
just,
go for it.
okay, so we said normally it should be at least 15%, because like we had some situation that was not 15% last year. So we added this table. Can you go up a little bit? So we added this table. If there is one number candidate for a position, it should be the 15%. If there's two, it should be 14, 3, 13, 4, 12. And if it's like more than 5 candidates, it should be 11%. And now, let's see,
Now,
Chair.
for last year's finance chair election, if it had been 10 or 11%, we would not have needed a runoff election
Yes.
at all. Aditya had a little over 11% of the vote count in the general election.
So this is a runoff, this is a general election rule, and if still we cannot do the 11%, then we'll do the runoff elections. That is what's in there.
And now this was, what was, we didn't change anything here, but hopefully the 11%, well, whatever percentage, if there's a lot of candidates, will reduce the need for runoff elections. But if there's still a need for it, there's still the question of, okay, do we end elections? By the Senate meeting before spring training sessions are supposed to begin, or do we still need to reconsider that? That was something that was brought up last week. That if there's some way we should end the runoff election even sooner than that. So that, think about, not sure there's, and then internal officer election process, we want to make sure that was clear for people. I don't think that was there yet last week, was
We
it?
did this, but before that, do we have any questions, objections? We do, okay, let's go.
Just a question.
Mhm.
So let's say that person X gets disqualified from the election. Can we remove the amount of votes that person X got from the total vote count?
Yes,
We did not do that.
Well,
last
no, because the total count is based on ballots submitted.
year. Yes, but that person got disqualified.
I know, but the 15% or whatever percentage is based on the total number of ballots submitted for the election, not for a candidate anyway.
Yes,
position.
but the candidates' votes are counting in the total ballots submitted. So maybe we should.
We don't
work
know
on
what
removing-
else was on that ballot. That's only one of the positions on the ballot.
Okay,
Yeah, we're not gonna throw out the whole ballot if one of the candidates on the ballot is disqualified.
okay.
Yeah,
you. Okay.
now,
Should we do something individually about the candidate then, like something to, or it's okay, it doesn't matter.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is if a ballot is submitted and only that candidate was selected on that ballot, we can remove those ballots from the ballot count, perhaps.
Yeah.
But that would only be in the cases when there's the only vote on the ballot is for that candidate. If there's any other votes on the ballot, then we can't throw out the ballot. That's a possibility, I suppose.
I think that's a great idea.
Yes.
Or does everyone else, any comments about that?
To be honest, I don't think that's gonna happen.
Well, we don't know. I mean,
Like,
It's the only thing,
we can put that like in this such situation.
If it's an edge case, couldn't it just be agreed upon in the Senate?
well, it should be in the code. You want to make it clear.
Okay,
If
so-
you want to do that. I mean, how much that'll happen, I don't even know. If it'll happen, but.
I think I also want to acknowledge that this was literally Ryan's idea from the general elections that happened, so I just want to give him credit for that. So, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yes, sir.
No. Just saying, I don't like the idea of like just throwing away votes. Don't, like, I feel like it's such an edge case, like, just like, it could be fixed by just having a better election system, so maybe just like, let's just like wait until we have a better election system.
Well, we're working on that 90%. They should have gotten back to me by now about that. But no, we are updating the election system, for those that didn't hear before. Based on all the feedback and all the issues we've had, and especially last year. The election system or voting system will, instead of, once a student submits a vote, however many candidates they vote for, they're locked out. The voting system is going to be updated so that during the entire voting period, from beginning to end, students can log in and add votes to, add additional candidates. If they only voted for, a couple candidates and they later, learn more about the other candidates and want to vote for them too, or vote for the other positions too, they can log in, they can remove votes. They can clear the whole ballot if needed, whatever they want to do, but as long as the voting period is still open, they'll be able to update their ballot. And then once the, last day of voting and the time hits, then it begins.
Yes. So do you guys like this kind of idea better or this kind of idea better? Because we have to finalize it today, guys, so.
I propose we just stick with the current, like, changes and then just like change it later once we have a newer system. And then like we can like change it again based on that, instead of just having to change things twice.
Okay, then this is good. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Without earning
Or so I just want to get clarification of this. Is the only thing, and if this even happens, would be the ballot. So the ballot would be, or the count would be reduced for any ballots where only a candidate was disqualified was the only thing voted on. So that was his proposal. So it wouldn't necessarily be throwing out anyone's votes, but if a candidate is removed and a ballot was submitted where only that candidate was on the ballot anyway and nothing else, only then would the number of ballots submitted be reduced, and that would apply to every basically.
But for that to be happening, isn't it like very reaching?
Yeah, I don't know how much that would happen at all anyway,
Okay, let's take
especially
it.
with the new system, but yeah, we could just not do
Yes.
anything like that. I was just a
But
suggestion.
if we're being real, someone who has broken the election code in the way that it was broken last year, there's a high probability that they're the only person on the ballot. And why should a random person who's running in the general election suffer because the election code was broken and the ballots are counting towards the total vote?
See, that's
You know,
now,
that's
it's
the
not
thing.
50 anymore.
With
See,
the
that's
new
why we have this
system, though.
table.
Well, yes,
That's why we have this
but-
table. Let's say you ran off against 8 people, right? Then you just only need to meet the 11% of the.
my point is,
But-
even if it's two
But
and one,
I-
okay.
Hold on, but also, one of the complaints last year was that once that happened and people knew about it, they wanted to be able to change their vote, but couldn't. So with the new
Okay, that's fair.
system, they'll be able to log back in and change their votes and such.
In the case of a runoff?
No, this would be, if a candidate, or if what happened last year with one of the the chair of finance positions occurs and the candidate is qualified and a lot of the people, you know, because they are doing things they shouldn't. And a lot of the people that did vote for them, you know, whatever, wanted to vote for another candidate now, you know, whether they were disqualified or not, they don't want to vote for them anymore. They'll be able to with the new system. Last year, once the votes were submitted by a student, they could not change anything.
So they can vote again.
Yes.
But doesn't the person get disqualified after the elections have already ended?
Well, last year in that, well,
So like how
I
would they
mean,
go back?
when the. Okay. I mean, we can put language in about that, or just see if it becomes a need in the future. I mean, you have to convince everyone else.
Okay.
I'm okay either way.
Okay, so let's take a hand vote about this one.
I mean, it's not even written there. This would be like,
Just a little bit hand vote so I can see what people are doing. Raise your hand if you think we should keep it as it is. No?
Can we officially get clarification on what? it
yeah,
is you
okay,
want?
yeah, I
so
wanted to-
let me
yeah.
write it.
Okay, should I explain it once more?
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, let's say there's a person who got disqualified from the elections, okay? And that X person had 200 votes with only one vote on the ballot, and that was for X. I propose that those 200 ballots should not count towards the total ballot count because that person has been disqualified, and still including their numbers in the total percentage is low-key unfair and not necessary. Does that sound good? Oh, wait, no, you call her, sorry, not me, yes, you.
Dennis is saying we can remove that ballot number if they're the only candidates that gets votes.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm
So
clarifying what
that's
he's
what I'm
saying.
saying.
So
If we,
only
if that
if a ballot.
happens, we can only remove it. Let's say you ran out with 8 people, right? And if all of the votes that was in chair of finance went to that disqualified person and the other 7 candidates had never had one vote, like not even one vote, then we can remove the ballot numbers. Otherwise, we cannot remove it. That's what Dennis is saying.
I have something to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was just, but isn't that in the case of like people can't go back and vote? Like that.
Well, I think what he's saying is because the complaint meeting happens after the election. So I think I get what he's trying to point out. If a candidate is qualified and there are ballots submitted, because at that point, nothing can change. And only that candidate was the only vote on that ballot. The person who voted didn't vote for any other candidates. Then he suggested throwing out that number of, you know, those ballots from the count or whatever.
So would all the other ballots have 0?
No.
Well, it's like, let's say I'm voting, I'm a student, and there is like a lot of chair of finance, chair of SRE, chair of things, but I only voted for that person, but not nothing on the other ones. Like I did not vote for chair of SRE, I did not vote for chair of anything, and then only chair of finance, and then saying that, then we can remove those votes. But if I voted for the president and the chair of finance, then they just cannot remove those votes because it's gonna be confusing.
And it's remove that number of ballots from the total count. See, I think what needs to be clarified is the number of ballots submitted. So basically, the number of students who vote essentially is what determines the minimum percentage required. So last year we had like 1,200 ballots or voters. Of that 1,200, the candidates needed 15% of that number to get elected. So I think that's where the confusion is. But if there's a candidate that gets removed and students voted for just that candidate and no other position, then we should remove that number of those ballots essentially from the count So that instead of needing 1,200, instead of needing 15% of 1,200, you would need 15% of, 1,100 or whatever number was removed.
But
So
that's
yeah,
what-
that's what it is. It's about the
That's what it is.
percentage required and if there's. Yeah, but if the ballot contains votes for any other candidates as well, then it stays in the count.
It stays in. So I'm saying because we can go to the votes again. People will probably vote for several.
Well, no, but again, the complaint meeting, the final disqualifications happen after voting is ended.
Afterward.
So, if a candidate is qualified or, word gets out that their candidate is doing really bad stuff, like what happened last year,
Mhm.
students will be able to change their vote.
Mhm.
That was one of the things. Last year, students said, this candidate screwed up or this candidate was doing something wrong and I want to change my vote. That was before the voting ended, but they couldn't change their vote then because of the election system. But if a candidate gets disqualified after the election is over, then we should consider reducing the number of ballots only if the ballot contained only a vote for that candidate and no one else.
Yes, Ron.
I personally agree with Audie. I think it's a reasonable request to make an input.
Okay. John?
I disagree. I'm sorry, like, I was assuming most people were gonna disagree, but it's. Just to put it into perspective, I get it from your perspective of how you were like. The situation that you had to deal with in terms of chair of finance, and in that sense, I think it would be like. A reasonable claim to cause that this would work in your proposition,
Well,
but.
impact all code.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like, in that case, it makes sense, right? But for me, for example, like Dennis exclaimed earlier. That happens at the end, after it closes, right? So the complaint meeting is after the voting closes, and you can't change the votes, and then you drop off the ballot at that point, if it's only for you, that one candidate, right? But the problem with that is, like, let's say for me, I technically broke the elections code when I ran, right? The first day, I broke the code where you can't have the Deanza logo on any of your flyers, okay? So if Victor or Veronica at any point decided to complain about that, there's cause for evidence that I could have been disqualified. If that's the case, in that circumstance, it's like, one day, my flyers were up. That
doesn't mean the election committee is gonna disqualify you.
Well, yeah, definitely. It's not, it doesn't mean, but it's subject to disqualification.
Well,
That's a rule that I broke and it's under the election commissioner's purview to decide that, right?
Well,
But
the
it's,
committee.
or whoever's decision to decide that, but it's still something in which you can get disqualified for. So if that's the case, then I don't think all people who voted for me during that time period were affected by that flyer.
Well, this is about if a candidate gets disqualified, like the election,
Yeah.
the committee decides somebody did something grievous enough. And it's after the voting is ended and a candidate gets qualified and the only votes on a ballot are for that candidate and no other candidate. Only then would we reduce the number of ballots submitted for the purposes of calculating the percentage, the number of votes needed. So I'm not quite understanding.
Let me clarify it because I think there's a confusion right now. Basically. I'm just gonna- So they're proposing.
You can't write on the whiteboard if you really want this.
You don't have any more.
May I approach the board?
Do this, while you're walking.
Yeah, okay, thank you. What I'm saying is that doesn't really matter at all, because like the thing about you getting disqualified for something or not, it's not based on how much it affected the people who voted for you. The thing we're talking about right now is that if students only voted for you on their ballot, no matter how big or small your crime was, like not crime, but like your
Yeah, if you were disqualified.
you
And that's
breaking the
something
rule
that-
was, it doesn't really matter, because in the end, the ballots are still gonna get removed from the total vote count, because then if you get disqualified, that's not fair to Victor or Veronica.
To keep that,
To keep those ballots of you even after you're disqualified.
and only if the ballot just has a vote for you, not if it has ballots
No,
for
I
other things.
totally understand
too.
that line of reasoning, I do, but it's just in the case where, actually, Ramen.
Yeah, well, but like I get what you're saying, I 100% agree with you, but at the same time, the elections committee also decides who gets disqualified. And that's not a disqualifiable ballot. So
Yeah.
if someone's getting disqualified, it probably is for something that is like worth taking out total ballot, numbers.
Clear out the confusion, let me just say, so that student voted for chair of finance and did not vote for anything else. Then they're saying, if that chair of finance got disqualified, we're removing the balance for that thing,
From
and then
the
it's
cap-
gonna be
from the total.
reducing total balance as well. That's what they're proposing.
Yes, now, if that person voted for, say, president and that chair of finance, then the ballot remains.
Or chair of finance and do not remove the rules. But I'm
The
just
ballot
saying.
count.
Okay, so in my opinion, I'm just saying, because we can go back to our voting page, I'm pretty sure people are gonna vote for
Again.
several positions.
Aura, this is after the election's over and they can't change their vote.
I know. But
Yeah.
still, people are gonna vote for several positions in general. That's what I'm saying.
We're
So
just
that's
saying,
gonna
if
be a
this happens,
very-
have it
very
clear
close
in the
to
body.
0% possibility, but still, if there is, if this happens, we just remove it with the chair of finance. Oh,
Just that number of,
I hope that cleared it.
just the number of ballots we just reduce submitted.
Okay, clarification, it's not gonna increase like the rate of people's ballots, increase the rate of people getting disqualified for positions. Like it's not gonna intensify that,
Yes,
it's
yes.
literally
No,
just
no, no.
like.
If they
it's
get
just-
disqualified, they get disqualified.
Okay, also another thing, like, can we like stop talking over each other?
I don't mean to
It's really hard
interrupt,
to hear.
but that is time, we would need an extension of time.
Yeah.
Extend discussion by 10 minutes.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All not in favor, say nay. Okay, extended by 10 minutes.
Okay,
Respectfully, can we all please raise our hands before we talk, because this is getting so annoying right now.
yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Ryan.
I feel like there would be one important consideration for this. So, okay, let's put this into like the perspective of both the old system and the theoretical new system, which, I do not know anything about. Totally. So, under the old system, when you do a vote, so let's assume that a student votes for, the chair of finance, and then, doesn't vote for anyone else, and later. Gavin.
Okay, sorry, before we continue this, is anybody in objection, like against Audie beside me? Does anybody object to Audie's claim? You do?
Anyway, so under the old system, let's say that a student only votes for the chair of finance, and, so. And they can't go back to edit their vote, like afterwards, when they finish voting, they're gonna be like, oh, I want to vote for this other candidate, well, but they can't, because they can't change their vote. And then when the election results are tallied, then, with this new policy, their vote is, deleted, which means that this is effectively a student's voice being erased, so the students, like, doesn't really.
In the old one though.
Yeah, this is the old system. So under the old system, like their voice would just be like erased entirely, and Dennis.
Well, I'm just raising my hand.
Special leader, guys. You guys hear me?
Okay, fine, I'll continue. So under the old system, like student voices would be erased, and then you would just end up with an election that does not really represent the student body. Under the new system, where you would be able to like vote for the chair of finance, and then you would be like, oh, actually, I want to vote for the same candidate. So you go back and change your vote. In this case, the new policy literally does not make a difference, because no students are going to be deleted. Like there will be like three
Let me say
maximum.
one thing, let me say one thing, I agree with Ryan, that situation is very reaching, it's kind of possible, it's kind of like close to zero, but I'll give it to this, right?
Okay, I understand what you're saying, whichever system you're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's always best to have things clearly spelled out in code or bylaws or whatever. So that if it does come up, you're not confused or, all sorts of debate and issues and whatever at that point. So if we can put something in the code that addresses this, no matter how remote it might be, then we should. Secondly, essentially their ballot is now empty.
Yeah.
How are we silencing their vote if there's nothing
Well, no,
there anyway, in either case?
under the old system, they wouldn't be able to go back and vote for another candidate, which means that they lose their ability to participate in the election completely.
But this. They had the ability, but they couldn't change it, unfortunately. In either case, this is after the voting is complete. And if it turns out there's a candidate that just really did wrong and gets disqualified, removed, and there are ballots where they were the only thing checked, the only person checked, nothing else was checked. They are artificially inflating the number of ballots submitted. So all we're talking about is reducing that total number by the number of ballots that only had them on it and nothing else.
Please raise your hand before talking. Okay, any other things? Okay, Katya. Oh, I'm sorry, Mara.
Okay, so what I was gonna say before we did like the 10-minute thing is that I'm noticing that people are arguing against different past arguments and like convoluting them all together. I think we just need to write down what the proposal actually is, so we can actually debate the proposal, because again, people are like arguing past statements and then repeating different ones, and like it's like layering up, and to be honest, I thought I understood what was going on, and now I'm starting to get confused. So like, can we just write out what the actual proposal is?
Scroll up so we can see it. Huh? Oh, wait, never mind. Sorry, I was talking to myself. Let me. Okay, this isn't like the final language, but basically, only if a ballot has only one vote for a candidate that has been and that candidate has been disqualified, and
this is after the voting period is ended.
yeah, after the voting period is
Yeah.
ended, and that candidate has been disqualified. It will be removed from the total ballot count, that's all. And then that new count is what will determine, based on that count is how we will calculate the 15% or whatever percent
Okay, I think it's pretty.
for everyone.
Okay, I think it's pretty clear. So, do you guys wanna end the discussion and vote for it? Or do you guys still wanna discuss it?
After
I move to end discussion.
voting
Okay.
has ended. Okay, there.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, so.
Well, that's two people, that is not.
He needs clarification.
It's, you need a majority.
Okay.
So while the voting, should we raise your hand if you think this should be in the election code? Is that the measure? Yes, it is. Then it's gonna be in the election code.
Okay. All right. Let me just make sure we got nothing else that we missed here.
Did we talk about internal officer election process?
Yeah, that's the next section, but before we get to that, actually, hold on.
Dennis, did we vote on ending the full item discussion or just?
Well, yeah, that's where I'm confused, because there's still the rest of the items to finish. I think we just wanted to end discussion on that item, get up,
Discussion.
I mean, what do you guys want to do?
No, wait, that's not,
I mean, it was a.
Whoever made the motion.
that's not allowed, you can't vote to end the discussion for a thing that's part of the discussion item. That doesn't work, cause you can't write that in the minutes. You're gonna say, I move to end discussion for item 1, section A, like B, and then just continue talking about the rest of the stuff, that's just like,
Okay, so the motion was to end discussion, period.
yeah, exactly, if it wasn't.
Is that what people wanted?
Yeah, that seems like that was
Okay.
the agreement. That's-
Okay, then can I get approved to elections code?
Well, we
We already did it.
didn't finish, we can. I mean, there's,
They didn't send the discussion.
uh,
So what's going on? Have you opened the Skype? I'm gonna just press you on this. Come on, it's very. Yes,
I know it's not that big of a deal, but I would just want to advise against actually taking action on this item because it's not listed as an action item on the agenda. And all it takes is one political science student who knows what's going on to like write an article about us and make a complaint, and we will all get in trouble, okay?
okay,
well,
but.
I think, hold on, for the purposes of, knowing what to do with the election applications and so on, with that consensus. That we, and part of it was from the admin code anyway, we have consensus about the chair of administration, about the election commissioner, and so on. So we are okay for now. We'll continue to make sure people are informed during any info sessions that are left, and we'll approve the next week. We just need to make sure it gets on as a discussion action item next week. Okay, and we'll finish with the other sections that.
So we'll present it again next week.
Yeah.
I'm just getting.
But we're, Laura, with everything else we have consensus on, we're okay.
No, this is election code. We already presented last week. It was an
Yeah,
election item.
well, we'll just have to present it now. I mean, it could have happened anyway.
Yeah, yes,
Just,
yes, John.
just for clarification, wait, so if we do it next week, will it be able to be implemented into this election cycle?
Yeah, I mean, we got consensus at least on the items that it's that affect like the application process anyway. So we're okay. We'll make sure everything there is updated. Anything else, we'll still finish discussing and approve or not approve next week.
Do you have agreement?
Yeah.
I think we should finish it because if we move to next week, we just like spend time and listen it again.
We can't vote on it.
We can't.
It's not,
Discussion item.
We have to wait.
I should have an action item. But then administration code is an action item. They should be
it
just.
shouldn't have
approve
been.
that.
It's according to bylaws, code changes have to be presented as information discussion 1 week and then at the next meeting action. So that's in the bylaws, regardless of what it says on the agenda.
But we already presented 2 weeks. The election.
But in this case, we met the bylaws requirement of it being information discussion 1 week. It doesn't mean we have to vote on it the following week. It could have been tabled. It could have been sent back for committee for additional discussion. There's no guarantee, even if it was action on today's agenda, it would have been approved today. It could still have gone to next week anyway.
Okay,
So,
then we're done.
hold on, Van was suggesting something, just trying to check, so I need.
Mr. President, can we get clarification where we're at? Cause I feel like we're breaking so many rules right now.
Yeah, let me.
We've ended the discussion and then we're continuing to talk about stuff regarding the item.
I'm double checking right now, sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're not presenting the item or description. There's just clarification about what to do now, but yeah, I agree. We can't talk about the actual code changes.
Okay, since we ended the discussion, I think we should sit. It's ended.
Yeah, I think we just move to the next meeting, so at this point, it's gotten way too convoluted now. We will just be back next week. Yep.
Okay.
2 weeks of 5-minute recess.
Yeah,
No,
Hold on, yeah, I was gonna, okay, before we do anything, I was gonna ask, I do want a consensus generally about how you guys feel about recess. Would you want like a 5-minute break to go use the restroom, drink some water, or do you just kind of wanna, go through it? This is like an unofficial vote, sort of, I guess raise your hand if recess is your thing.
Wait, I want to say something. So
Yes.
this change is really important. I need all of your attention. And if you can do that, we can move on. But if you cannot ensure that we pay attention enough to the item, I would suggest to recess for 5 minutes, come back, be a little break, finish it. I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree. So, do you guys want to recess? Yes or no? Unofficial vote. Someone call it, someone make a motion.
I move for recess for 5 minutes.
Anybody seconds? All in favor say aye. All not in favor say nay.
Nay.
Okay, can we do a vote very
Pause is
quickly?
not facial, actually.
Can we do a vote?
Yeah. That's.
Everybody, thank you.
I think there was a question.
Was there a question?
Or something?
Oh, that, it says that laying aside temporarily is not debatable if it's seconded. On your little board.
I moved to lay the question on the table. That's a different.
No, there's,
Okay, now.
there's,
But still taking a recess is also not debatable.
I moved to recess for.
You can amend it,
It's,
to make it
it's,
3 minutes. if you want.
We need a majority vote.
yeah, you need a majority
no,
vote.
that's why we're. Okay. What's the question?
It's been 5 minutes now.
No. Okay. No. So, yeah, the vote wasn't clear, so we just need to take a roll call vote, that's all, you're not debating.
It's not a debate in terms of like, oh, we need to discuss why I have to go use the bathroom. We're just like,
It's just the vote wasn't clear, so he's asking for a roll.
it's about a majority vote. To have a 5-minute recess.
Okay, so the vote is for whether or not there's gonna be a 5-minute recess. Okay, so if you want the recess, say yes, if you don't, say no. The aura. Yes. Katya?
Yes.
Veronica? No.
Yes.
Iris?
Yes.
Rami?
Yes.
Erica?
Not here.
Okay. Ryan?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Vincent? No. Devin?
Yes.
Waddy? Yes. Joshua?
Yes.
Jinky?
Yes.
That's one.
Keep going, we have to.
We have to go through, okay.
Yes, record it.
Victor?
Yes.
Fatima?
Yes.
Anish?
No.
Jenny?
No.
Wa?
No.
Matugo?
No.
Okay. Master? Leah? Yes. No. Am I counting?
Yes, he moved it, sorry.
Now we not. For future reference, we're taking more than 5 minutes to do this vote, so let's just pass a recess.
Yes, okay, the total is yes, 5-minute recess until 6:05.
16 yes to 6 no.
Okay, 16 yes to 6 no.
So 5.
Right, so that's perfect.
So seven.
You just introduced that. Sorry. Okay. Hi, everyone. Are we meeting quorum?
Anyone? Victor.
Okay, we are meeting quorum. Okay,
We've got a couple of actions.
I think, you're using the restroom, but we are meeting quorum, so we can move on. Okay, we're moving on to business item 5 and then eventually 6. They're both presented by your fellow senators. And they're, more discussion than just technical discussion. So please bring the energy, and I thank you very much. But this is to talk about the midterm elections and a potential rubric that we could use for future midterm elections so that we go much smoother. Okay, I will leave you to it. Thank you very much.
And then just clarification, you were hoping to use this for the internal officer election.
Yes.
Yes.
We
Yeah,
will
so
use
not
it.
just me. Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
So, we will be presenting a new way that we can introduce in the internal elections, and if that works out, hopefully we can implement it in the future, internal elections. I'm sorry, yeah, we're first introducing it to midterm elections first, and then after that, if that works out, we're introducing it to the internal elections in the future. So Van came up with the idea of having a rubric, that can guide us in doing a more efficient election and having more successful discussions. He suggested that we have about 5 traits, that we can, chosen traits that will be utilized as a guidance in helping us choose a senator for a position, such as by asking questions to the candidates, and we can see if they fulfill those traits when they answer those questions. More of that will be explained by him later. And also by traits, we mean the qualities or factors that can truly help candidates succeed in their positions. These can be selected based on the experiences of current senators who are either in these roles or have closely worked with the candidates. To their roles. And traits could include anything from specific skills to personality, characteristics, or anything that has proven to be helpful in the past. So I will talk a bit more on comparison with how we conducted our last internal election. So based on our observations from the last internal election, we noticed these 3 challenges that came up while conducting our midterm election. Many of us were uncertain about the specific traits or characteristics required for the position. This unclear expectation led to relying on personal experiences and judgments when coming up with positions, rather than connecting them with the critical factors needed for candidates to succeed in the election. The second thing is, without clear objectives for the questions being asked, much of the focus was placed on individual perspectives rather than the qualities needed for the role. So by the time the Q&A session ended, some of the other senators would know more about what the position does, and that would lead to missed opportunities to ask more specific questions, as well as a lack of emphasis on identifying a few core traits that the candidates will be displaying. And third, and because of unequal participation, candidates were not judged fairly. Additionally, during the last internal election that we had, I noticed that we kind of kept going in a loop while having a discussion, because I believe we were discussing without clear expectations. We also couldn't reach a consensus of what we would agree on, which in my opinion did not serve much purpose. And without clear guidance, certain opinions become a bit influential during discussions. And also, while I believe that having such passionate and strong opinions can serve as a strength, it can come as a challenge when we're discussing as well. So this can further lead to lengthy
This can, this can lead to further lengthy discussions that would go nowhere, and we would not have a fruitful discussion as well. And although we had a lot to say, this type of discussion went off course. And when we could have used that time more efficiently in having more like specific or like more correlated discussion, it went inefficiently.
Okay, so with that observation, I suggest to have like the 5 traits or something to provide us the guidance, and people can focus on that to find out what we are looking for in the candidate, and then we have kind of the reason to take note, and after we can have a more active discussion. So this is kind of the model I made, and notice that there are 2 steps on the slide, and this one just the 2 steps on the senators we will do in the future, but not the whole process. So I will go through the whole process right now. And the first step, the committees will choose the 5 traits to assemble, like finance, we choose the traits that fit with like the budget analyst, and they will suggest to the admin committees, and then they need to suggest at least 10 traits to pick from that pool of like the 5 traits from that pool. And no.
How do I zoom in? Because Laura's asking me to zoom in.
What do you?
We want to zoom in on this one.
What is
Document there.
that's not allowed, right?
Well, no, what is it, a PDF or what?
Yeah, that's PDF. So I will send you guys out later. What?
Bottom right corner.
Well, no, there should be a way to zoom in. What app is-
No, we zoom already, but like I copied the picture is small, so you cannot zoom already. There's also a link on the like the Zoom if you want to take it.
What app is this right now? Here's what I'm asking. Yeah. All right, let's go back to.
I don't think there's any way to officially zoom in, but we can send everybody the.
Yeah, we should do
documents
that afterwards, but no, they're.
Are you okay with that?
How did you get it to? No, there should be, how did you, is it understand? No,
Sorry, can you ask Van how important that is, because if it's.
I will talk about it. So add all the element right here. I will point out, say what it is, so you don't need to worry about that. Good.
Yeah.
You can zoom in.
That enough?
Yes, thank you. Can we see it? Okay, I will talk about it. So that's 2 steps right here, note taking and advocating. So that's what you want to do. And the whole process with the first one is submit the trace. So on like I will take a sample of the finance, they will submit the trace to the admin committee, like at least 10 trace to make sure that we have enough the pool to pick out, and to avoid kind of bias and exclusive selection of trades. And after that, the election commissioners will choose out the top 5 trades they think that more fit for the position from the list of 10 trades at least, and they will bring out the sheet, and it will be distributed into to on the senators at the meeting, and it will be kept secret before it will be distributed on the senators on the meeting. And we will have 5 to 10 minutes to comprehend what it is, to formulate the question, and we will start the interview. And with that 5 trade in mind, we can have more active like note taking, and also have kind of the reasons right here. So each of the trade we have for the candidate. So we take the reason, and then we kind of leave the note for the later discussion, and also the point is will be rated. So the step 3 will start the meeting and ask question. And while we're discussing on one trade, for example, like the candidates will say something, and we think that can satisfy all the trade, we can leave a note. But we will move all the trade by trade to make sure that all the candidate can address their trade accordingly. And then after we have all the reasons, we will
figure out what is the final point will be for each respective trade. So for example, that persistency is the column one. We have the reason we will choose from 1 to 5, and then trade by trade, and we submit up. And after that, we will aggregate all of them. So with on the sum of we will put to this table for the on the candidates, and then we aggregate all of them, we find out the average. So for example, this one has the highest and kind of have some discrepancy right here. So 10 and other, for example, one senator say they are really strong at that trade, and they just like kind of high. So we have some discussion with this between two, and then we figure out the final point and kind of fix this one for the second time. We submit the final point again, and then the final decision will be based on the trade with whoever has the highest right now. But for the current process, we are testing, so we will not rely completely on this one. It just add a to guide a discussion, and if it work in the future, we can use it and substitute for the whole process of the interviewing. And that's kind of the overview. So, any question?
So, we go in with the traits, we go in with the questions, and after we finish the interview, we aggregate first, and then we discuss.
Yes, so that's like just the first discussion to see how like what you rate is different or no, and then kind of figure out who has the different opinions.
And then the final, oh, sorry, and then the final vote from vote.
That will still vote, yeah.
We're not removing the voting process. We're just using this as a guidance and having more better discussions.
Who decides the traits?
The traits will be decided by the committee, like they have a meeting together and they say, okay, so this is my top 5. For example, if you have like different traits, you can have a list of like 10 or 20, and the final trait will be decided by the admin.
Who designs the questions for the actual interview?
The question will be decided by our senator will receive the trait at the meeting, and they can have 5 to 10 minutes to discuss together. And for example, if one person find out the question for trait number 1, they can say, okay, I got that question. We can move on to another until we have 5 questions. Like to address 5 traits, we can move on to the interview.
So essentially our questions are based off the traits given.
Yes, the traits kind of the guidance, but on us, we conduct the interview.
So essentially, we look at those traits and come up with questions that can possibly uncover those traits from those candidates.
Okay, so for budget analyst, finance committee will decide on the traits, and then we'll come here after learning the traits. We'll prepare 5 questions together.
Not 5 questions, like just 5 traits, but the questions are not.
So the questions you can decide on what, like how many ever question you want, but at least 5 questions to make sure that 5 traits are addressed in the interview.
Yeah.
Then for
So can I clarify what I was saying? So you're saying we need at least 5 questions that are based off of the traits given. And then we can have other clarifying questions so that we can see if the person is, you know, they
And
can.
even like in some cases, like 2 or more traits can even be like addressed in front of question. Main thing is we have 5 traits.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah. What if, after the discussion about what questions to ask, and then you suddenly, during the interview, you have another question that just popped into your head? And you ask that question?
what do you mean by that? Sorry.
Yeah, so you're saying we're going to be deciding, like, all the questions we're gonna be asking before the interview starts, right?
That's just the at least 5 questions to make sure that we can conduct the interview, but you can follow up if, because like the table will have a lot of column and you need to make sure that each of the reason fill out. So for example, one candidate, they cannot fill that question and we can stick with that column a little bit to make sure you have enough and all senators have enough reasons before moving on.
So questions will still be come up on the spot,
Yes,
and we have to write the questions.
You don't have to write the questions.
you just ask like the normal process we're having right now.
The main thing here are the traits.
And
So-
I see Margaret.
Is it done the day of the interviews or like in advance?
The traits so that kind of two options right now, we can publish in advance, but the cons of that is that some candidates, they kind of prepare in advance and the question is not really honest, maybe, and I'm kind of debating between the two. And for the reason I choose to publish on the day because it's write a real interview in the real life. So you go to a job interview or something that will not let you know what kind of question or what should you prepare to just do a research about the position and then show up and do kind of that interview.
And just for clarification, correct me if I'm wrong, so the interview part of it, that's just a guideline, so. The questions, would be just like before, it's just that the hope is that there will be at least 5 questions asked that cover those traits. At least one for trait, and then there would still be, additional questions or whatever people want to ask, but the hope is that there will at least be 5 that cover those 5 traits.
Yes.
Okay.
So I saw the table, it had like all the sums for like the total 75 traits. So will we still be able to see like the breakdowns for each of the traits? So like if we all saw that like a candidate, we all decided that they weren't particularly strong at this one trait, then we can just focus on like discussing that, because if we only see like the totals, then.
That's what I'm thinking too. But it's kind of complicated when you put on Excel and break that to 5 more traits. And I'm not good at that, so right now, I think just the sum first, and then if there's kind of really good point, you want to make sure that everyone else on the same page with you, and you want to raise the point of the candidate, you can bring that discussion up and then say, this candidate should have more point or like should be higher on that one, and you just present your point of view.
So just to clarify, so are we sitting down for 10 minutes, all of us generating questions for each trait? Or are we just spontaneously asking them questions, but we relate to the trait?
So what I mean by the formulation of question is that just you can come with random, a question that address one trait, you just come random, like spontaneously, but make sure you have enough question. Is that?
I mean, the issue that I'm seeing is, for a lot of senators, for a lot of different people, a certain trait could be answered in a whole bunch of different ways. And then there might be a question that isn't so relevant to the role. That's a concern.
Are you suggesting we should be discussing
On the questions we're asking, yeah, it would be fair to do that.
To understand this better, could I get an example of a specific trait and like what question you could pose towards that trait?
Yeah, so I asked Yamin yesterday, I ran a test on him. So he said that for example, budget analyst, one thing is impartiality. So you need to be impartial, indifference. And he come up with question, what was that, do you remember?
Well, I came up with a question like, if there was a dispute between 2 parties over how much to fund or what, or in any case, just a disagreement over an item, what would you do as a third party to mediate a solution?
And with that question, we can address a lot of trade together at one time, but because of time limited, so the candidate should be focusing on one trade and then they can give the answer. Dennis?
I don't know, I kind of, agree with Luca. I wouldn't limit a candidate, tell the candidate, you can only answer the question as it applies to one of the traits. So I think I agree with Luca that, candidates can answer, a question can apply in many ways and an answer can apply in many ways. So I wouldn't be too restrictive in that sense.
Jamie's.
I have a question related to the time constraints since the midterm election, since we're doing both since the Senate is doing 2 midterm elections. And there's gonna be like 30 minutes of deliberation, and the previous midterm election already went over time and had to be called for more time. How is this gonna work? Because there's gonna be time needed to discuss both candidates and have like discussion time for everyone to be on the same page. I'm worried about whether there will be, like, it will go so far that there's gonna be needed another midterm election.
So when I made this table, I refer to kind of the BIQ for UC, so they have a limit, the word limit. So they kind of ask one question, we need to be straight to the point and like be able to answer the question and address the trade, and then kind of like limit the time to like 30 seconds to 1 minute of each person. So it's really depend on the ability to answer the question correctly or like straightforward.
So we would normally limit a candidate to answer the question from like 1 minute.
I also want to add, I think the question more pertains to the extension of discussion time, 30 minutes are allotted, and then we went, we need more time, candidates ended up staying on, answering questions for over an hour. So sort of having a more restrictive number of questions potentially, and having more structure to how we decide the questions instead of just someone raise their hand, they ask whatever questions in their mind. And then.
Cassia.
I think we need to be mindful about what the goal is of, I think this is good, you're trying to make it more time efficient and overall like quality efficient as far as getting information and engaging each candidate. So like in theory, I think the traits thing is good, but once again, it's kind of incredibly subjective about how each individual would like rate how well they that their answer like fulfills that trait. So I think in order to make it a little bit more objective, there should be some sort of weighting going on for one. So that we don't have to like, first of all, 5 should be, I'm not sure if 5 is probably the best, maybe more like 3 and having 2 backup in case there's like a tie-up between the candidates. And then also, making sure that each question is like better crafted so that we can be mindful of being respectful to the candidates, and also, once again, we have a better metric of how good they fulfill that trait.
Margaret first, and then Iris.
I want to advocate for having these questions and the traits set in advance meeting. In the past, when I've been interviewed for things, I have been given like an outline of the types of questions that they're going to be asking and what specific aspects of the position that they're like hoping to fill. And it's also technical, usually like on like job descriptions of like what the position needs to do and stuff like that. Yeah, I think it's reasonable and it could help with time and like understanding even what we're looking for on the day of, so we can just jump straight into the interview then. Yeah.
I kind of thought of something like this. How about like we kind of share the traits that we will be looking at? But
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you very quickly. We do need an extension of time. I recommend a good amount, and it's not like we have to use all of that time, but just to have that buffer.
I move to extend time by 20 minutes.
Anybody second?
I second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Not in favor say nay. So it was Rami, seconded by Lauren, majority vote. Okay, 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah. So what I was saying is that we talk about the traits that we will be looking at for the election, and it will only be disclosed to the senators and before the day of the election. And when they know the traits, they can come up with questions already beforehand. And during the day of the election, we can just like come up with offer our questions, and then we can pick and choose which one we'll be asking.
Do you have like more slides that can give us like a better overview? I think you have lots of questions because we're not entirely sure about your process. So do you have like more slides after this?
I will share the table of that.
Or is this like your last slide?
Yeah, that's how
No, there was, no, this is slide 5.
yeah, that's all.
Not really related to the interview process, but I'm pretty sure James's question was actually revolving around like your guys' deliberation and the actual candidate. So I think they were talking about like, how are you guys gonna work on time for that rather than the actual interview itself? Because you guys did go, I think it was like 2.5 hours or 2 hours over time left. So I think that's what James was trying to get at.
I just wanna say this, because it seems like it's just general consensus, for the people who've spoken so far, it's like, kind of against this, or like kind of need inquiries about it, but I feel like kind of changing the perspective of how we look at this a little bit more, this is, it's not removing anything from our current process, and it's not like a set or like the aggregate. The reason why I asked in the first place is the aggregate, the final voting metric, and you said no. It's like, it doesn't hold a bearing towards us and our vote. It's only used so that it can guide our conversation and our discussion, and to make it so that the candidates have a more fair representation of their, I guess, voice and what they believe best suits them for the candidate under the position. And so like what Van was saying about, I think the best solution to it, in my personal opinion, is to give them the traits book ahead of time. Because if you give them the questions ahead of time, we'll have something where, like last year, budget analyst, same thing, where that dude on Zoom was talking about with an ATR analysis at Deanza, which is not applicable, and it's just because he ChatGPT'd the question. And so that's easily like, that's something that's gonna happen. You know, it's happened even when we don't have these like questions beforehand, and it'll definitely happen if we do give those questions ahead of time. And I think the trade thing is, the example that Van gave for Ming is perfect, in the sense that like the trait indifferent, right? A multitude of questions can be asked for that trait, but if you know how you want to be indifferent or impartial towards your position, you should be able to answer any question in regards to that trait. And so that way you can best convey your personal attributes and thought processes. And again, this isn't imperative to the decision that you guys make as senators in the vote. It's like a guiding thing to just make it so that it's fair, that all the candidates, all their attributes that are gonna be most applicable to the position are heard. And then for James's thing, I think we should definitely work on that, the timing, giving them a more accurate measure of how much time they're gonna be up there. That way they're prepared of that in advance, so.
Right. So is that what you're asking for? No, Iris.
Oh, no, I was just wondering if you had like a more like holistic idea of how you're gonna implement it.
So
Because I feel like there's like some like concerns that like are brought up, and like I'm not sure if this fully addresses all the concerns.
Unfortunately, we don't have more slides.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I was just wondering if they were.
So this is what I'm having right now. So this one, the sheet we will distribute, and the final, this one we will send out like the link to you guys to log in and just type in your trade, and then we can move on with the discussion, and then later on you go back and type in your trade in. And any question?
I just wanted to say that I don't really know how I feel about this, because personally, I feel like the traits are a little too restrictive, because I know that we will also be discussing about the people like just outside of the interview, like we talking about how they are in the committees, but like I think that should be given more weightage than just how they're able to like answer on the spot, because what I'm looking for in a budget analyst is not like how good they can approach a question that we ask and how good they can think of something super fast. I'm just looking for how they did in my committee.
This one will not be like determining factors that just add to like help the interview process right now. And like for the current process, like we're still looking for the trade. And like last time I remember Rami and like Katia, when they come to that interview, they don't really know what kind of skill, what kind of technical knowledge or something, and what they can only do in the interview at that moment is just asking for the trade so they can process how the candidates are. And this one just help them to improve that processing, and we can still take into account
the side kind of skill or knowledge or contribution anyone. But like this one just guide the current process. It doesn't change, it doesn't substitute or replace anything.
Also, I get what you're saying, but then again, the last time we had the internal election, when we were discussing about the candidates, what they did outside of the interview, what they did during interns, we kind of go in a loop of discussing, going back and forth regarding it. And from what I saw, it kind of led to nowhere from what we were discussing.
I see a lot of pain, but I want to hear someone who have not like to talk yet.
Okay, I think like we're kind of overcomplicating things. Like with this table and all, it's really like, it's restrictive, like what Adi said. And I think like a lot of us, we're not strictly just talking about like what they do, but in the back of our minds, we also know about the person and their traits. So maybe like the suggestion is really good. So probably what we could do for next time is we could talk about their traits, but I don't think like having a table and discussing it beforehand is really necessary. Because I think like what we see in like our interns, what they do is also important. Because what's the point? It's like, oh yeah, their trait is this. They answer it this way, but like it's all talk, not action. Yeah.
So let me reply on that first. I have thought about that before, and so when it comes to like the kind of that discussion, it's really subjective on you, and like there are a lot of people that let's say they have less interaction with you, and you will have a lot of impression on couple of person, and your trade suggestion will be guide navigated to one person or two couple persons. So it's kind of not something that objectives we can focus on, and it's more like it's rather focus on you, and that's kind of cognitive bias, and the book on my table is still there. So it's really hard to realize that because it's unconscious bias, and it really depends on your interaction with other people. So that's why I suggest this one, and this originates from that book also. So
Okay, so you are saying that because we know them in our committee, we will like pay more attention to that, but when we had midterm elections and the administration committee spoke about it, everyone overruled it, like, oh, did not even take into an action or care about what we said. So I don't know, it's kind of.
I would go with Katia Javin, it didn't matter.
I have one last thing to say. If this get approved, will it be put in the election code? That's the structure for like we're doing the election code. So
Well,
that's one last thing.
I mean, this came up in administration. I don't know if this. I mean, this is the internal Senate process, you know, what they want to do. I don't know if we need to, especially at least now. I mean, I think they're wanting to kind of try it out anyway, if the Senate is okay with it. I don't think we need to worry about election code or bylaws at this point.
Dennis, go further than Katia, sorry.
But I kind of want to echo what some of the other people were kind of overcomplicating it, and I think like letting the Senate know, like from the chair or something, like what kind of things they're looking for in a candidate would be helpful, but going into a table and all this other kind of stuff, maybe going a little too far, but you know, I'm just kind of echoing what some of what I heard is. Like, I think it's a good idea for at least, you know, the people not on the committee to have an idea of, okay, from the chair or whoever, like, you know, these are the kind of things that I think would be good for this position. But beyond that, yeah, maybe you're going a little too complicated, but that's kind of what I'm saying. So
I think the idea behind having some sort of like rubric where each person has inputs their like score of whatever, either traits or like, let's say, one version I can think of that could work well is you can, for the people who are in the committee, they're since they're the ones that work with them, they would have more weight by having another section that talks about how well they do certain tasks in the committee. And then everyone else would do like trait, for example, and so that way there would be like essentially a weighting for those who are directly working with those people and have a better idea of what type of person they're looking for. So that's just an example, but I think it's still good to have a way so that to track like every single person's vote. Because I think right now, there's just like, as Aura said, even though admin had like their picks, like they were going for people because of how messy the discussion got and how wisdom got overpowered. There's just no equity whatsoever.
So I will reply to that first. I forgot one point of this one. So the final decision is just a yes or no question. So we vote on no, right? And this one is kind of break down. So you can kind of more deliberate, and so you can figure out what constitutes the final yes or no. And you break it down into like a lot of reasoning. It makes you like more rational instead of just the final decision. And like I feel like I think that wasn't right or wrong. It's just a yes or no. It's not enough to like. But I have our reasonings behind that. And any reply to Katya and my point first, Javin?
Okay, I still, even after what I said, I still don't think you guys are like grasping it in the way that it's intended to. Everything you guys said is so true, like, I agree with everything that you guys said. But this is not something that holds, like, our next midterm election is in 3 weeks, okay? What we had last midterm election, my fault or whoever else's fault in the Senate, we had faults, right? And we need something to make it more fair for the candidates that are going to be running in these next midterm elections. And this is something that doesn't provide a con when we apply it into the midterm election. It doesn't make it unfair because it's not the final say in your vote. It's not even like a determining factor in your vote. It's more, I think you should look at it from the perspective of once your tallies are in, you have a holistic way of looking at what the other senators think. So if we were to apply to the legislative affairs liaison case, if Aura, Wadi, and Eddie all put like for one, let's say the trait doesn't have to be a personality trait, right? It could be like working at making legislation, right? And they have a 10 out of 10 across the board for one candidate, and then everybody else is like 3 because of the interview. I feel like then it's like kind of retrospective where you look at it and then you think, okay, maybe if the 3 senators from the admin committee where this role is going to be hired for are all saying that it's a 10 out of 10 from their experience with that person, like certain skill or trait, then you should probably think during discussion, oh, and this is for myself too, right? Where I've had faults in that during the midterm election. It's like, I look back and I'm like, okay, maybe I should kind of check back a little and think about that from that perspective. I feel like that's where we should go out with this.
Okay, so first I would like to ask, like, since we're saying that this is just going to be an added benefit and like we're gonna use this as a guiding thing and this is not gonna have a direct influence on our final vote, how are we using this to guide the conversation? Because like saying that we're using it to guide it, I don't really understand what we're gonna do with that information. Second thing, I just want to address that the reason why admin committee was not taken into a lot of consideration in the previous midterm election was because there were a lot of credibility issues with what the previous Senator Eddie was saying, because he was unclear about his own responsibilities.
Reply?
Regardless, I do want to make this clear because this hasn't been discussed. One of the main things that will really make the next midterm election better is structure within how it's run. Number of questions, time limit, rules about interruption. You know, are we gonna extend it? If so, by how much? Maybe we just don't extend it at all. We have like a set time. Sort of really lacing all of that out is gonna make things run way smoother. And that will make it much more, it'll make it easier for the senators to really decide who performed, or I guess who answered the question the best.
Jamie's is a matter.
And furthermore, to address the concern of like not making it clear enough for what Eddie wanted. He is the only one who truly knows his position, and allowing him to have a say in the type of trait or the question like he wants to ask for the next legislative liaison would be a long way into making it more clear for every single senator to have an idea of what to look for. I feel like it's also extremely impartial, because Gavin also mentioned the implicit bias or any personal bias that you may have, like regarding the different candidates. And this is just a more, a way to simply streamline the position into making it extremely equitable, like, or very equitable for any candidate that may be coming up. Because when it comes to character is such an extremely, like, it's very subjective across all different opinions. And if a candidate comes to the position, like comes into a midterm election where there's no structure, no like guiding, like no one has a consensus on the questions that are being asked, it only brings more confusion relating to the discussion and more time is wasted talking and trying to get everyone on the same page.
Okay, Madhu?
I first wanted to speak on how I agree with your guys' responses to Lauren's question of like, how is this a tool? If we already know that we, like, in our minds, we like do that, we like set the traits that we think are most important, and then we ask these things, and then we ask questions that apply to them. This applies structure to that, so that like, so one person's perspective on which traits are most important don't like fully crush others, that don't get vocally voiced as strongly. I think that we need to start thinking of this more as of a tool rather than a critique on our own personal behaviors. Cause like, how are you supposed to know like the intricacies of how each person is like deciding which person is the most productive or not? And reference to admin committees, like comments about like the productiveness of each person and like what they did. If we had more structure and knew, oh, they did these tasks to this degree and it was productive because of this and it had this outcome and they were been supportive in this way, and we all thinking in like the same line, that could be helpful. Like, I don't know if it's gonna like magically fix everything, but it would be nice to like know these things. I think that this could be a helpful tool if it was like more streamlined and maybe like slightly less complicated. But I think that we need to stop thinking of it as like a personal, as a critique of our personal thought processes, and rather like as a tool that we can use to make things easier. And also like the last thing, echoing that like, it isn't a fix to all the other problems that we had in regards to time, but it's just a like an additional tool in regards to us not listening to each other. Because in our conversation, like, we were not listening to each other. We were talking over each other. We were yelling. We were disregarding other people's points entirely. Like, it was just like, it was a debate, not a discussion, which like definitions, whatever, but like, yeah.
So I will wait for a little bit. I want to address Adi's question first. So can you repeat if that address your question yet or no?
I still want to know how we're going to be using this to guide our decision.
So as I mentioned before, so when they ask the question, we take the note, and that note will be like bring to discussion against each like different perspectives, and whatever the point you made, if that's kind of a really good candidate, but then you feel like this is not good enough to choose to move forward, you can bring that reason up, and like you can ask for all the reasons to all the perspectives. So it kind of gives you what is the discrepancy, and you need to reconcile before moving on. And like it just bring up the discussion, focus on like what we are having. We may have like different things in mind.
But what if in a committee that I know is gonna be working together for like long hours, coming on weekends, and I'm giving the example of the finance committee, and they're gonna be in close proximity all of the time, and I want different traits in each person. Like, I want someone who's like super analytical about things, understands finance really well, and then I want someone who's a good person, right? So I know that they both will be working together pretty well. How do I define that in this like scenario?
Reply first.
I think what some of the people said, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the tool seems to be very much not for like an individual to decide, you know, like qualifying factors for a candidate, but rather for you to be able to communicate to the rest of the student government what it is that you feel about that candidate that makes it strong. So it's, I believe it might be less of an individual interpretation and more of something that makes it easier to share what your thoughts are and what your ideas are based on
I apologize, I don't mean to interrupt, but that is the time for extension, for the extend time. Does anybody want to extend time, or I
move to extend red failing.
Anybody second?
I second.
Lauren seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All not in favor say nay. I heard like 3 voices for both times. I'm gonna just repeat the aye, nay, just. Your opinion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All not in favor say nay. I think it was aye. Dennis?
To you, but someone could challenge it, ask for a roll call vote.
Sorry.
My suggestion is that it takes really long, so we have like 3 more response to make sure the hand raise before address first, and then we can discuss next meeting.
No, go ahead. Can you? Or,
Zan, did you have anything else you want to add?
I don't have anything to say right now, but I want to hear like the voice behind that.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor for extension for 20 minutes. I'm gonna say that it was approved, because there was enough people that seemed like it.
20 or 10?
Sorry.
For 20, I think I said 20. 20.
It was 20.
Yeah.
We can end discussion.
We can end early.
And you can always end discussion early, I want to make that clear. Okay.
Nishita?
Oh.
Oh, you should finish.
Sorry, yeah, just to.
Did you finish?
No.
Oh, sorry about that, go ahead.
No, it's all right. Just to summarize what I was saying, I think that the rubric would be valuable as a tool to kind of have a better understanding of what your fellow like student government members are saying, rather than something to use to develop your own opinion. Thank you.
Nishita?
So this is someone that was part of the midterm election last quarter. I feel like, again, this is a very good structure for you guys to like speak amongst yourselves without basically attacking each other. And also on top of that, regardless of whether Eddie knew about his position or not, there were 2 other people that were there, part of like administration, that had opinions too. Those opinions also went unseen and unheard. So again, I feel like this is a very, very good way to kind of bring structure to that. So nobody's voices are being, trampled on.
Rami?
Right, to speak to all of these voices, like it's literally just a recommendation from the people who actually know these interns. That they're not saying it if they can't say it, let's say they're not outspoken, they're not, well-spoken. They're saying it here, we can all see it, and it's just there, you know what I mean, there's just not even, doesn't have to be part of the conversation.
As much as it is a very big complex table, it is very subjective and rather restricted because it can be leading to personal biases of what you know with this person or the candidate running for the elections. And wouldn't it be just better to make a strong rubric of responsibilities and weaknesses of those candidates rather than being unfair of like, oh, you know this person from this committee, and being able to discuss and try not to interfere with other senators of what their biased opinions are to that candidate. And trying to make a rubric of pros and cons of what you want in that person and what they can be able to do to provide that support is better than having those 5 traits that can be very subjective and can be misleading and will often make more time be wasted in those interviews.
Okay, thank you for the suggestion, but given the time constraint, I will not move forward like with that, like into discussion. I will discuss you after the meeting and Lauren.
Sorry, just to clarify the whole thing, right?
Yes.
So this is gonna be like a Google Doc or a sheet. And then like essentially we like, let's say we're having the program's elections. So we fill in like the traits before the election so other senators could see what we're looking for and then they could put into note during the elections or, cause I'm really confused with like, what's this?
Oh, so the trait will be like submitted to the admin committee. I don't know if you listen to that part yet. So the committee will pick out 5 traits and like they make the rubric and they give out to the senators at the meeting to guide the discussion and the interview questions.
The thing is like, there's so many positions in the committee, so it's like. I don't.
It's providing you a framework for what you should be looking for in a candidate, in a committee.
Maybe not traits, but like that.
Johnny,
I move to end discussion.
Anybody second? Ronnie?
Oh, second, I remember, yeah. It's like,
Yeah, you second, okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, say nay. Okay, end of this business item, moved by, who moved
We
it?
got skipped over by like
Got
four
it.
people.
Seconded by Ron.
Sorry?
Moved by Jan.
Yeah, I'm saying we're wrong. Was there another question?
I was just saying that her hand was up and then four people talked after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, regardless, the discussion is ended. I recommend anybody who does have further questions to talk to Van and Waddy. And they will be working more on this. Thank you very much for coming out here.
So I will bring this one to the next admin meeting. If you guys want to work on it, come to the admin meeting at that time. And we also bring it back to the Senate next week and we can work on it again.
That's news to.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. New agenda item, regardless of all that, this. We're almost through it. I know 6 items, quite a lot. I promise there will be a Senate meeting where there's one, you know. Anyway, okay. Victor, I'd like you to come up. We're gonna be talking about a business item. This is DSG Canvas. It was once online. It was super useful. Now it's not. Victor, I thank you very much. And let me pull up that. This, is this all you need?
Before I begin, I just wanna make sure that you guys, or at least I have your undivided attention. I know it's a very long meeting, but this is a project that I've been working on since winter break. And I'm like really eager to share this, so I would really appreciate if you guys like pay attention. I also would like to ask the senators, the public, and the advisors as well to keep discussions at the end of my presentation. Most of the information you'll see will probably be not complete. I know that there's some errors in what is on the canvas, but I just want you guys to focus on the ideas and concepts of it. So yeah, so to start off, my name is Victor Pham, and I'm one of the social media officers for DASG. And the reason why I wanted to make this, or at least bring back Canvas, is one of the goals that I had during elections was to bridge the gap between students. And I've seen it work with Instagram and Discord, but I wanted to bring it a step forward. A lot of students don't have Instagram or Discord, but majority of students, I hope they do, have Canvas. So what I really wanted to approach this was to both inform and to educate students about not just DSG, but also the other organizations and resources on Canvas, or Canvas. So yeah. So to start off, for those of you that are already enrolled in the DSG Canvas, you might notice that the first module is the same. I did update it. I'll go briefly through them. I would give you guys a link to view all of the modules, but given that this is the only editable link, I'm not trying to give it to the public, just so they don't edit any of my work. But if you guys are interested in like reading through all of them, please like reach out to me after the meeting, and I'll be happy to share with you guys. But yeah, so just the getting started page, what is DSG? Pretty straightforward. It just lists why you should join DSG, as well as the structure of it and positions. Most of this was composed off of the website. The only reason why I'm switching, or I'm trying to have a switch to Canvas instead of website is realistically, how many of you guys actually use the DeAnza website? Okay, some people do on a daily basis. Okay, some people do. Fair question, how many of you guys know that there's an events calendar on the DeAnza website? Okay, actually a lot of people do. But in any case, everybody has Canvas. So this is where the education portion comes in, to educate people on DSG. So the first module has the structure as well as shared governance. This isn't completely updated, but what I intend to do with this module is to get more students involved in our shared governance process. So listing all the meetings as well as like the point persons to contact. And this next page is just a brief overview of some of the programs on campus, as well as some of our civil engagement programs like VITA, Public Policy, FAPAS, FAPAC, as well as some student communities that we offer on campus. And most of this is just a brief description. I'm hoping, once I get this rolling again, hopefully I can get interns to help work on, getting more contact information for these groups. Moving on to the next one, I'll skip over this real quick, but the tutorials, pretty much I wanted to educate more students about the process of DSG. I feel like for many students, DSG can often be intimidating just because of the things that we do regarding Robert's Rule, and parliament procedures, which many students aren't familiar with. So it can often be intimidating. So these tutorials are just some guides on like what it takes to be an intern, what it takes to be a midterm senator, the life of the senator, the roles and responsibilities, as well as what's expected of them if they were to run for the general elections or internal elections. And moving down, I also did want to talk more about things outside DSG that we don't really necessarily advertise as much, but I feel like are important to recognize, such as maybe the scholarship opportunities at De Anza that many students can apply for. Well, some work study programs, college program, or bonus. Website itself. Then moving on to transfer opportunities, information. So more about transfer for students that are actively pursuing the transfer to a four-year university. Some more information about like the assist.org website, I get see how to book a counselor and counselors for international students as well. Then moving on to more of the general resources that De Anza has to offer, housing resources, student services, filing an official complaint. That was always a link, but never was used. Something that we could look into. And then more about the other programs. So Office of College Life programs mentioned at De Anza, ICC, the Eco Fund, as well as the flea market. And then this section would probably be where we put all the discounts so the students would know about that. So that was mostly the education, or actually, I forgot. I did start on, I was going to do all of the committees, but after doing finance first, I realized how tedious it would take to do every single committee. But the campus would also be giving students an overview of what the committee is all about, as well as what they do and the responsibilities. This infographic is a little bit out of date, so that will also be changed. So that was pretty much everything for the education portion of it. But what I really wanted to use this Canvas for was to inform students. So as you you guys see, the calendar feature on Canvas is super underutilized. One of the issues that marketing faces is that we have to get marketing requests done. And once we get marketing requests done, usually around 3 or 4 days, we have to make a flyer for them, and that gets posted. The issue with that is that programs meet right after with marketing, so we can't assign any interns to work on it. However, this solution will allow us to just get a marketing request in and then just post it on the DSG Canvas. So that we don't need a flyer. That's already on everyone's Canvas. You get an announcement, and then it's already there. There's no need for a flyer. This would just streamline the process. And another thing that I'll also like to mention is that this will not replace the DSG Discord. I won't put any discussion posts, no conversation we'll have here. It's mainly just to inform and then educate. Yeah. And once again, I really went briefly through these modules. But if you guys are interested in helping out more with this project, or if you guys are looking to proofread some of the contents that I have, feel free to let me know after the meeting today. But yeah, I'd like to open it up for some feedback. Yes.
I love it.
I am in agreement. It's just I love the idea.
I also think it's amazing, but one question, is the bike program, is the bike program also?
I don't think the bike program is on there.
Maybe we should add it.
My apologies. Luca.
I think what we could do is you make an announcement in the Discord. All of the senators and their respective programs or their respective committees, their respective projects, they just send you sort of thoughts, ideas, things that you might not have included. And then we sort of compile all that and then really make sure that this is fleshed complete.
Definitely. Yes, anyway.
I would also love to have a section on well, probably in the finance committee section, where we can inform interns of what the finance committee does and what possible tasks there might be for them.
To reply to that, I'm pretty sure last, or maybe 2 years ago, they actually did something with the Canvas, which is, they did like an intern project. So pretty much this would be like a quiz that students would, or prospective interns would take. So this would, I guess, help streamline the intern process. I don't know if that's something that you guys want to do again, but it's definitely something to take in consideration. Dennis, you had your hand?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say that finance used to use the Canvas in some way, apparently that way, but it can be used in other ways for finance or any other compete. If you wanna put like a how-to guide for the interns or something in the community.
Yes.
Hi.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I really like the idea. Would it be possible to get like the documents and forms on there as well? Cause like I know they're on the website, but it's just sometimes it's hard to like navigate.
Documents, which documents are you referring to?
I mean, like bylaws and things like.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, that can also be influenced in the Canvas. I know on the DASG website where all of our bylaws are like placed, it can be very hard to navigate. Because it's like through like different like tabs and whatnot. But we could completely we can make like a new section to add all like the bylaws for each committee as well as like election and whatnot. But thank you. James?
I have a question to ask and a further thing to ask that. Will this be delivered to every student at DeAnza or just people in DSAG?
Every student at DeAnza. Well, I wouldn't, so how students are connecting with Canvas right now is that if you go to actually I can pull it up right now.
I mean, I think the old version is there now in Canvas. If any student logs into Canvas, it's there, and actually, there's even a link directly to it on the DSG homepage as well. But it's there on Canvas, it just hasn't been used in over a year.
To my knowledge, this is the only link that you can actually like enroll in the Canvas.
I think it's available through search, or at least it's supposed to be. If it's not, let me know.
But yeah, the students would be would have to enroll through the Canvas course. Yes.
Then as someone who's in the administration committee during the resolutions of information, I think that there is already this information of like, what is DSAG, what does DSAG do, the finance committee, all of the information is already on the DSAG website. And I'm just concerned that if you have Canvas, like DSAG, even in Canvas, to every single student at DeAnza who may not even have an interest in it, it may just clog up more information that they could have been using for their class. I'm in support of the events calendar because I feel like that's extremely underutilized and not many people are talking about it enough. I'm just concerned about like, if this is such a problem where students are not knowing about what DSAG does, why not just change up like what Dennis said during admin meeting? Why not change up and make the DeAnza website more accurate, like more accessible and like make it so the regular general student can access the DeAnza website better in comparison to having a Canvas that would repeat the same information that one could already get from the website.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you, James. Like everything else, what you said, I agree with you, but that's why we're doing the Canvas, because we can't change the website. That's, well, we can, but it's more, so there's definitely a lot more procedure that we have to even take. In order for us to have gotten our profile pictures that we took 3 weeks ago onto our website, it took 3 weeks. To upload our pictures onto the website, right? So I think this is like just a streamlined version so that, yes, might clog, but you can always hide Canvas courses and it's only like 2 buttons to do that. And so I think it's a great way to kind of like have a duplicate website on Canvas for students.
My basic
Yes.
Okay, my basic concern is like, if this is such a thing where most students don't know about DSAG and students don't even know about like regular other programs that can be offered by student support and services, scholarships, and all of that through the DSAG website, then I think the problem would be the DeAnza website is not doing its purpose of accessing and giving students information. Why not just target the problem of the DeAnza website and force it to streamline instead of just building another workaround?
Yes.
And either way, or this is not something. Normally the photos don't take 3 weeks, and DHT can update the website either through the advisors or the public relations officers both have access to edit it. I can't speak to the 3 weeks thing or anything like that, but all of that can be updated. And I do agree, you don't want to just duplicate information, as far as I remember. I could be wrong, but the Canvas wasn't necessarily used to just completely duplicate everything on the DASG website. But provide some additional detail or something, perhaps it would need to be looked at. And if you do put codes or whatever, I would link to the PDFs on the DN's website rather than uploading separate documents that need to be updated. But yeah, I really do think we should look at the DN's or DHG website, make sure it is working for everyone, whether they can access Canvas or not.
Okay. I agree, but at the same time, we can't, there's no way for us to change completely the entire structure of the DANZO as a whole website.
Well, the DHG.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent. But also. Well, for one, I mean, yeah, if we do actually move around a couple of things on the DHG website, it would be a lot easier to go through the flow of information of what is DHG, the different, I mean, I know that's there, but. I'm tired.
And wants to speak.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, can't you just put like a banner, if the problem is getting students to access it, can't you just put a banner on the my portal? Redirecting people to the DSG websites, because most people check their web portals. I have to register.
That's, if I'm correct, I don't think that's out of our hands.
We could ask.
That's
I will say that, I was a student here at the DANZO, and as a student, navigating the website, it wasn't very intuitive for me to even really know how to go to find information about DASG, and even knowing what forms and documents, what link to click, like it's all a lot of text. I mean, there's images, but it's not very intuitive, so I think the Canvas is helpful, even though it could be considered repetitive. But like having it there and seeing it as a student, if you're not really involved here, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, before I answer the questions, I will have to say that, the DHG campus itself, is not meant to just replicate everything. I'm hoping to like, it's mostly just to educate more students about the committees itself. I mostly envisioned the Canvas to be used just for the purpose of, the, Canvas calendar itself. So it's just to add an event and then people can see like, hey, this event's coming up without the need of actually like making a flyer itself. So just to streamline that process. And then the education or the info about DSG part was just something that, hey, Canvas has this, so why not just like add that there?
Okay. Nitpicky detail, if we decide to go with the Canvas. The Canvas link is next to the Reddit, which I've never heard of. So maybe making it more like visible, more access to it. And also the Discord is there, which we use like professionally. So just some thoughts. That's all.
Oh, Rami, you had your hand up?
Yeah, also to speak to the website, I think that is a good point to bring up, and I think as senators, we should take a look at it and try and fix it.
Yeah, and the website itself is being updated regularly by the public relations officers as well as admin. So that is also in the works of being updated as well. Yes, thanks.
Two things. One, I mean, the public relations officers, we try to keep updated what's going on now, but I agree that it could use a total revamp. So that is something we could do as a project. Put together a feedback form and all sorts of other stuff to update the DASG website, make that a lot clearer, because I agree. Too many, too much text on one page, too many links on the left. It could definitely be clarified. As far as being able to update things, Canvas is, Canvas, too many Canva things. Canvas isn't necessarily something that can be instantly updated by the students either. Either way, there's a process. And it's actually quicker now that we've got access and such set up for the website to be updated than it is for the Canvas to be updated. So, I mean, some of this is, you know, things are different from when the Canvas was being used to now. And we should definitely, whatever that gets decided about Canvas, I really do think we should have a project and get feedback and everything about the website and update it. Revamp the DASG website.
Yeah, I really appreciate your efforts and a lot of time on this, I understand. And one of opinion I have is like, whatever we do in the future, I don't object to this one, but like we should focus on like, if we create something, will the next generation will have to update this one, or they just want to focus on one thing? Because right now I feel like that two way to update information will add more work to them, or like just help them make the work easier. So I think we should consider to the future, because we don't want to create something for this year only, and like the next year they don't really utilize it. So we just waste more time. So that's my opinion.
Rami? I moved to end discussion.
Anybody second? Kartik?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, say nay. Okay, discussion ended. If you have other questions, feedback, everything, send it to Victor. He's awesome.
Oh, what? Yeah. They can say like, oh, this is our third meeting.
Yeah, I'll get to that. It's on the agenda.
We can go to the front, by the way, so you guys will have to sit. So you can have to-
What?
Is that what that's not? But that's horrible. That's.
Okay, everybody, all right. Meeting's still going on, just a little bit more. Thank you all, long meeting, really appreciate it. It was a very important meeting. I have an audio clip of Dennis going to eat. But with that, are there any public comments? Yes.
Okay, not to be that person that makes it longer than it needs to, but I think when anytime we're having a discussion, we need to make a full pan of the room so everyone's being heard. Moderator has had their hand raised 5-6 times and got talked over or skipped over, and I think we can do better. That's it.
Any other? Yeah.
There's gonna be, I'll keep it short, I'll try to keep it short, okay. Today's meeting, I say this with love, like, was run, it could have been run in a much better way. In both, like Dennis, a lot of the insights that you have, I really appreciate it, and I think it definitely gives us a lot of insight, but there were times, especially during Oria's presentation, where she tried to present multiple times, and she ended up moving back and just sitting in the chair at one point. And I think that it's important also to give way to the vice president to speak on behalf of the stuff that she has been working on as well alongside you. And then in terms of the way that I want to just, you know, reiterate what Leah said, is just like, yeah, there was a lot of, it could have been facilitated a lot better. The discussion definitely was not led in the manner that it should have been in terms of parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules, Brown Act. We broke it, I think I could probably like a dozen times, probably more, to be honest. And I think that what Adi said reigns true, heavily so, that it takes one political science to know that they're talking about, to write us something on us, and then a surge of public comments comes to the next meeting, and then we're under scrutiny. So I think in order to prevent that, we should try to uphold the, you know, the mission and the values that we try to present and to propel forward for our, you know, student government, which is to be, one is to be equitable, and I think that the discussion was absolutely the farthest from that today.
Any other public comments, Ben?
So follow up with what Leah said, I apologize for like missing murder on my agenda item. So it's really hard, to be honest, to like look at overview pictures on that one side. And I will try to like improve myself, but I also help, like want you guys to help me with that, and anyone standing over there, so you guys can point out like, oh, this person raised their hand first, because it's really hard to observe like all of the room right now on that position. And the second is, my item is not ended yet, so I really appreciate all of the opinions and suggestions. I will work on it. And also, if you need more clarification, you have concerns, just come to the meeting. And instead of like just showing up at the time we have limited right now, and we don't have enough time to address all concerns. So just come to the meeting with the admin, or meet me or text me, anything you want. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Yeah.
So today's meeting is a meeting anyway, so, SRE would like to run the survey on connectedness and, equity within the Senate. All interns are welcome, do it, senators, advisors, everyone, the work polls. I'll make sure to send it in the DASG Discord, so, yeah, fill it out, please. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, moving on. Are there any advisor announcements?
So. First of all, I really appreciated hearing from senators that I don't normally hear from. Like, it wasn't like a ton, but like, I really saw how much value it adds to the discussion when you do speak out more. So I would like to encourage more senators who I don't always hear from to add to the discussion. The other thing was to second what Leah mentioned, but I would actually noted down that I really appreciated the way Van was managing the discussion during this item, because like I saw that he was presenting, but he was also looking out into the crowd. Okay, I'm gonna, your hand was up, well, I'm gonna go to you next, you know, just communicating who he's gonna go to in that way. So I think that was a great example, even if some people asked it, but we're working to improve on that and help each other as well. Yeah, that's all.
Any other advisor announcements?
It's, been a long meeting and, lots of discussion and fruitful discussion and feedback, and, I do apologize, for any of the times that I, got overzealous or spoke over people. I'll try to do better with that as well. And, I'm just glad for everyone that's here and all your discussion and feedback and well, especially, thank you for staying till 7:30 almost 7.
Any other advisor announcements? Yeah. Okay, any interns that this is your first, second, or third Senate meeting and you wish to run for a midterm election or the general election, please come up in the chat, write your name, the current meeting number, and which position you want to run to.
My name is James Wade, and I'm trying to run for the election, the elections commissioner position.
Hey, all the senators, so the interns will be introducing themselves after they write their name for the position they're hoping to run for. Or they're. Just over here, you can just stand in the middle.
I'm Seeker. I'm gonna be running for the midterm budget.
Hey, guys! Weak clap, but interns are gonna be introducing themselves and the position they're running for. These are your future prospective senators here, so please tune in.
Thank you. My name is Iker. I'm gonna be running for the midterm budget analyst position, and nice to meet you all.
Clarify, anybody running for the general election, they can, and they're putting their name down. It's okay. I mean, it is preferable. Yes.
Hello, my name is April McTaggart. I'll be learning how to be a candidate for vice president for the general election.
And I'm running for chair of SRE. Hi, I'm Sharon, and I'm gonna be running for the position of Chair of Marketing. I'm Sharon, I'm running for Chair of Marketing.
Hi, my name is Suyash Jabria. I'll be running for president.
Also, meet Daniel, I'm running for informational name.
Hello, my name is Kyle Crowes and I'm running for the midterm election for budget analyst.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cyrus Nakar and I'm gonna be running for the general election. I'm not sure yet. I'm trying to decide still.
Once again, thank you, everyone. If I will say this, if you have any criticisms for me at all, please come up to me, text me, anything. I appreciate advice and feedback. With that, thank you. I adjourn this meeting at 7:28 p.m.